pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, Board, it's good to see you back. A few of you haven't been in town for more than a couple hours, I know, from the conference this weekend. I'd like to welcome all of our guests today, and we don't have any need for translation here tonight, I'm assuming. Okay.
¿Hay necesidad de traducción al español?
All right. And we'll move on to item A3. I'll accept a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll make the motion to approve the agenda.
There's been a motion by Director Johnson to approve.
Second.
Second by Director Garza. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. We're going to move on to board development and linkage. Item B1 is recognition of outstanding achievement of students and/or staff. So we've heard about it for a long time. I think we honored them last year too, but the drill team is winning things again, and we want to honor them again. So the board, if we could go up front, I'm going to be just naming off all the different drill team members that were involved. It's state, right? Fourth place in POM and second in hip hop as a team. So we're going to hand out some awards. So we'll meet up front.
Are we going to search here? Sure. Okay. All right.
I didn't think I was going to do it because I forgot my glasses. Oh, no, I didn't.
Okay, so I'll call your names off one at a time, and if you could come up, and we just all want to shake your hand, and then we'll hand you the certificate at the end. Actually, I'm going to switch places with Dr. Hirsch on the end. Okay, so first we have Isabella Brunetti, Carmelita Garcia, congratulations, Genesee Gonzalez, congratulations. Denise Guerra. Congratulations. Nice job. Ebony Guzman. Oh, okay. Ebony's not here.
Okay, sorry.
Sonia Hernandez. Emma Lawson. Nice job. Mitzi Maldonado. Congratulations. Congratulations. Clarissa Mello. Emily Mendez. Brianna Mendoza. Giselle's probably at the game too, right?
Yes.
Giselle Monroy. Hang on, Brianna. I got it. Good job. Caden Quigley. Tanisha Salisbury.
Thank you.
Good job, Caden. And the last one, who also I guess is not here. Congratulations. Dilcia. Okay. Dilcia Gonzalez. So great job. You guys just keep getting better and better, and I know you're looking forward to next year. And so do good again, and then you'll be up here next year getting another award.
And next year, I want one of those jackets. Those.
So now, Anna, you get to come up and give your speech. I know you've been waiting for it.
Do I have a time limit? No, I'm kidding.
Yes.
They say I talk a lot.
I will. First of all, thank you for inviting us. We really appreciate it. And as you can see, I did bring the hardware because I think sometimes we forget, not that we forget, but these kids go above and beyond on what they do. And so Mr. Ashton already said what we placed, and I had that on there, but I wanted to let you know that some of the schools that we're competing at stayed have the luxury of having studios, and the kids have experience behind them. We take them, we have a studio here, but it just somehow, they just do it for fun. So it's not competitive wise like the other schools do. And then at the McFarland, they're learning, they're still learning, which is good. But we basically start from scratch. And so these kids, they're put through a lot because I'm hardcore, I'm old fashioned, and I believe in hard work. Anything can happen. So these kids this year, because of Kaden being part of the board and she needed to be responsible for her part, we were holding practices at 5 a.m. And the kids never complained. They never complained. They showed up. Once in a while, I would say we get a break, and I would see a smile. And so, but if I needed to have them come back and practice some more, they were there. And the reason we did it is because the choreographer that I get, I had her put some hard stuff into our competition to be able to beat some of the West Side schools and some of even on the East Side. And so these guys had bruises, they had scars, they didn't complain in front of me, but I know they went home aching. And I wanted to say that Tina and I are very, 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 very proud of these guys. They're a great bunch of teenagers. Not only were they committed, but I was told that we were like number 3 in the academic area. So we got beat by C-Lab, but Othello was number 3, and that's a plus. So not only do they go at 5 o'clock in the morning and they do their studies, I also have kids who are in sports. I have volleyball players, I have soccer players, I have wrestlers, and I had about 4 or 5 wrestlers during the winter that they were coming to my practices, going to school, then they were hitting the wrestling mats after school, and then they had tournaments on the weekend, and yet they didn't quit coming to me. So anyway, I wanted you guys to know that you have a great group of girls representing Othello, and we always seem to get compliments. Some of these trophies, like these first 5, we won them going against 3A and 4A schools, not just the 2As. And of course, in district and state, it's 2A, 1A, 2A, because there was enough teams that qualified. But these other ones, we're going with the big dogs, and we're beating some of those big dogs. So, thank you.
Great job. Thank you for representing Othello so well. Good luck next year. It never really ends, right? It just, there you go. Yes. Thank you, Tony. We'd like to get a picture with you if you can. So if everyone could come up. And coaches.
So my small shorties in the front, like normal, on your knees. So my short ones on the bottom. So Tanisha, Bella, you guys squeeze in. I'm short. I'm short. It's important they see you. Yeah. You know what? It's just so not like this.
Okay, ready? 1, 2.
Great job, ladies. And if you all want to stay for the rest of the meeting, that would be awesome, but you don't have to I'm sure you have things to study for. You could have slowed that down a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
So we'll move on to item B2, public comment. Do we have anything? Any comments? Okay. So item B3, then board member reports. So there are a lot of things to report on and talk about tonight. I wanted to get some of the maybe the quicker items out of the way first, but we'll start with what we normally do, the legislative report. Director Stevenson.
I had it in here. Oh, I can't find it. There you go.
So a kind of a hot topic right now is, for legislative that deals with education, is the 3% salary increase cap, and the different interpretations of that for teachers, since every school district is negotiating their own salaries this upcoming year instead of using the state's number. And there's a lot more things that I need to do a little bit more research on before I think I report about them. Other things about the session,
Okay,
so.
all right. Thank you, Jen. We'll move on to, the next item is a discussion regarding the linkage study session on April 16th, which is next Monday. I don't know if the board remembers, it was probably a month and a half, maybe 2 months ago, we talked about the outcome of the linkage committee, where we were going to go from there, maybe prioritizing linkage that we would do in the future. I know there was some discussion regarding whether or not we should do that at the retreat. You have to help me remember why we thought it would be a good idea to do a separate study session. Does the board remember?
I don't believe I was at that board meeting, unfortunately, so I'm not sure.
I thought we set the date tentative in case we didn't do it at the retreat. I don't know why that comes to my mind.
I think we said it right after I had gotten all of the linkage information. And since I've never been to a retreat yet, I don't know if I could say, yeah, let's add that in, or no, we don't have time.
That's what I think. We just kind of threw that date in there because we didn't really discuss it that night, so we just kind of threw a date in there.
So I wouldn't say the retreat is always the same. One of the things, a big part of what we do at the retreat is our kind of end of year board self-evaluation. That's something we always do. Last year, most of the time was put into Dr. Hirsch sharing his vision with us and how he was specifically going to measure the different, what's the word I'm looking for? The markers for ENDS policies. And so a lot was spent on that. And this year, because that's been shared with us, there's probably going to be an update. It probably won't take as long. I think more things can be put in, more time can be put into the calendar this year and linkage. I think that's possible if the board feels that this could wait. One of the reasons this came up is that Dr. Hurst had asked if he could have a work study session with the board to go over his communication plan. But talking with him, he's going to share most of his communication plan tonight, but then anything new that might come up will be shared with staff on Monday. And so as a board, we could be there at that meeting to hear the conversation as well. And so I wanted to throw that out there. But if the board would like to have a separate work study session to get more details about that we won't hear tonight necessarily in Dr. Hirsch's presentation, we can do that.
So you're saying we're invited to when he presents to the staff on the 16th?
So I shouldn't automatically assume that, but
That's exactly what we're doing. We're extending the invitation to the board. The meeting's going to be on the 16th. It's going to include all staff and all teachers, so about 500 participants. So the board is invited. It's going to be at MMS auditorium beginning at 8 o'clock.
so that's an option for the board if they're available. But the reason this was brought up was, one, to see, do we still feel that study session is needed for the linkage discussion? And number two, if not for that, we could still have a study session for the more information that's going to be shared with the staff that morning.
I love meetings. I think we should definitely keep the 16th. I don't have enough meetings in my life.
Okay, I'll be the sarcastic.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's right. That's your job. Sorry. Yeah, let's talk about that at retreat. I'm all for that.
Okay. It would be a calendaring thing as far as how we'd calendar in different linkage opportunities.
True.
What do you think, Tony?
Yeah, I think that'd be fine.
Ken?
Yeah.
All right. Maybe
I agree, Bill.
So it looks like, can we safely say we don't need to have a meeting next Monday?
Yes.
All right. Everyone besides Jen's okay with that? All right. Okay.
In fact, Dr. Hurst, how long will that meeting be on Monday?
It's going to be 1 hour.
Thank you.
Bear with me, I'm making sure I get this in my phone as well. Okay. So the next item is a discussion regarding interviews for student representatives. I'm going to need some help here for a second. Specifically, we were wondering about what time? Is that what it was?
What
Ellie,
day,
you
what
remember?
time?
No, the discussion item. There was a lot of things that we talked about for the discussion items. I'm just trying to remember the details of why we wanted to have this discussion regarding the student rep interviews.
So we wanted to know what time we were in.
Want to know what time? Okay, it was just specifically a time thing. So in the past, we've done that, and Tony and Mike can help me out, before a board meeting, right? I suppose it depends on how many applicants we get. But Talia wanted to get some feedback about what we were looking at time-wise on that. So the plan was to be before the board meeting, right?
You're talking the 23rd?
Remind me of the date again on that. It was 23rd. But we did 15-minute interviews. We had 4 people last time. That was my memory of it?
What's the earliest that everybody could go? I'm pretty open on Mondays, but
Typically for me it's 6.
that's what I figured.
What I wanted to know, do we want to interview all, or do we want to go through the applications and narrow it down?
Do you know how many we have?
We haven't
We haven't-
even put that out and we're approving
Yeah.
that today.
The application.
Yeah.
We're approving the what?
We're approving 17.1.1,
We're only
the
approving that.
application today.
We're not approving the application. We've already approved the application. We're approving that as a policy is all.
Oh, I see. So it's
Yeah,
already
we've
at the
said
school.
that. It's already, they're
Okay.
doing it. The process
right.
was the 1st through the 23rd or
To the 17th.
17th. So we're more than halfway through it.
My personal
Should we-
feeling is that it's good for the students to interview, even if we have more. My feeling would be is let's do it from 6 to 7, and then if there's more, depending on how many kids, maybe we need to do another one on the next night on Tuesday or something.
So definitely 6 to 7, and I suppose we could then even look at the times that we allot per interview as well. Do you know how many we have right now?
I don't, I'm gonna pick up all the applications on the 17th.
Okay. Okay, if there's something more that I find out, I'll just keep the board apprised of kind of what we're looking at is how many applicants, but right now we definitely will have an hour worth of interviews. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes.
Okay. Got it? Very
Can
good.
I ask a question?
Yes?
Are you guys talking about April 23rd?
Yes.
Okay, so if a student is in sports, is there a way that they can, like, talk that out with you? Because I know that's been some of the concerns too, being like, oh, I have sports, I can't miss that, because practices have gone on beyond 6 o'clock sometimes.
I'm sure they can schedule an
Schedule it.
alternative time.
You're talking about practice, I got you.
Yeah, so would
I
they
was
be
thinking
able
if
to
the sport's
schedule
gonna
like
be
a
a problem
different?
on Mondays, then
No, no,
probably
would
being on
ske-
the board
like,
will be.
would they be able to like reschedule it at a different
Yeah.
time?
I don't think you're
Absolutely.
talking about the meeting, you're talking about the actual
No, no, I'm
interview.
talking about the interview itself.
Yeah, so we're going to be contacting that student to see if they're available for the interview. And if they have a conflict, then Talia, I'm sure will let us know, and we'll do an alternate time. Yep, thank you. Okay? All right. Right now, just kind of going back, could you guys tell me if you're going to be at the meeting on the 16th? We will have to let press know that there'll be a
If we have a
quorum there.
quorum.
Yeah.
I plan to.
I do.
I do too, so.
50-50, but it sounds like there's going to be a quorum.
Quorum no matter what, yeah. Thank you. The next discussion item is regarding the equity conference, and that was something that Tony, I believe you brought up, and the feeling was we want to make sure that if we do this, we do it with some district staff, and district staff is interested in it, they're going. But I think you told me, Tony, that you found out you do have a conflict that.
I'm trying to remember the date. Do you remember
The
the date?
23rd of May. Right?
I believe so, yeah. Were there any other board meetings that were, board members that were planning on attending that? Jen was, okay.
No, not for me.
Okay. No matter what, and Tony, you can even find out later, when I brought it up to Dr. Hurst that Tony might have a conflict, their feeling was they're still interested in going. And so it's good that we have at least one representative from the board who can go. And I think that's the main thing I wanted to find out.
Do you know who else is planning on currently from district office and other staff?
Just all of the executive team members.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
I'll have to look into it. I remember thinking I had a conflict, but I can't, I don't see it right now, so I'll have to look and see what it was.
And is that it's
It's a Wednesday.
a one-day conference? Is there a need to stay overnight, or was that going to be up and back?
We're going
It starts early,
up and back.
Okay.
but I wouldn't, if I went, it would be just driving up early in the morning, coming back that night.
Okay. All right. Then we'll move on to board docs training. So this was something that came up at our conference this weekend, and as we had a chance to ask the board docs vendors some questions, and I think what I got from that was the board would be interested in some more training on board docs. Should we shoot for, we don't have to necessarily have a person here to train, right? We can do a training that's like video. In the past, I think they called in was all and answered our questions. Does the board feel comfortable with that, or would you like someone on site?
My personal suggestion would be is let's all of us write down the questions of what we would like, what we're thinking we'd like board docs to do and how, and then have a discussion and have Talia or Chris send the questions and have them send it back to us. I don't know if I need like a half hour of training or anything. I just really want to have questions and maybe an email back saying, this can be done and here's how you do it. And it could just be, all I want to hear is maybe this is what the board wants board docs to do, and find out from them, yes, it can be done, and then Talia really needs to be trained at that point, not us, if there's a disconnect versus what can happen and what can't.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep. How does the rest of the board feel about that? So really, it's on us to come up with the questions that we have that we can send to board docs and say we'd like to do. So it's essentially saying we'd like to do this. Is it possible to do this? Or is there, I guess, from the rest of the board, are there specific things you'd like to be trained on? I mean, for us, one of the big things for me is search, and I don't know. I don't feel like I'm a real bad Google searcher, but I struggle when I'm trying to find things and really dig deep into things from board docs. But
Well, he made it look really easy there.
of course they do, right?
Yeah, but.
Tried to steal his
I'd say-
computer. Thought that was it.
Right, that's all it was. So are we getting our questions to you?
Well, that would be the
And
next
by
thing.
when?
If we don't feel like we need any actual live training, even if they could call in and we could say, hey, we want to do this. In the past, I want to say they called in, but they could control the computer. We could see what they were doing, so we could visually see how to do certain things. If there's anything like that, then I think we should have some kind of training where we're able to
Having
see
said
it.
that, just because, I've been using board docs for quite a while, but the new board members haven't. And so,
Yeah, and that's what I'm trying to find out. If you guys think there's things like that you'd like training in, then we could do something.
I used board docs through the city quite a bit when I was in the city. Do they offer a training session online just to kind of help with some of that we might want to check in
Video training, you would think, wouldn't they?
online with it?
I've seen webinar
Okay.
offerings.
What do you think, Jen? Is that something you'd like to
I'm fine with
have?
just sending in questions, and because then after they respond, then we could go, yeah, we're still not getting it. Let's go on to a session
Okay.
So my question's really pretty simple. I just want to know what each level is that you can be on, what level normal boards are on, and how they, and then from a board doc's perspective, how they operate as a normal school board. Yeah, you know what I mean? I know there's different authorization levels. I don't even know what really they all are. But I'd like to just have a summary of here's the authorization levels, here's what each level does, here's how they recommend that you use it as a board. I'm not sure that we use it the same way that they recommend, because I asked that gentleman a lot of questions, and he looked at me like I was from Mars or something when I was asking these questions, so.
You do ask
So-
hard questions, Tony.
Well, he looked at me like, I can't believe you're not able to do that, so.
And my question is always just mobile optimization, as always.
Apparently, they don't think you need to use it on a mobile device.
I
heard
know,
that part.
every time they tell me that. Well, it's not meant for mobiles. Well, fix that, duh. So, yeah.
What do you think, Mike?
That's the complaint box, Jen.
Tell it how it is.
We submit questions, and I think there's some logic to what Jen says. If we can't figure it out, then we get someone to either do, I know we've had them at lunchtime, and they'll do a video thing where they're in charge and they're on the speakerphone, and they've been able, I, for one, am a visual learner. When I see them doing it, it sticks with me a little more, but I'm open either way.
Okay, so why don't we all send our questions that we have to Dr. Hurst by the end of this week? I don't think that I need to be the middleman with that one. And if you get your question in, then it'll probably get answered. If you don't, then it won't. Okay, and then after that, we'll determine if we do want some training. All right. An item that's not on here, but Tony pointed out to me last night in our midnight drive from Spokane. In this meeting is when we typically will tell the superintendent who is going to be available for what graduations. And so I would like to get that part out of the way. So I'm probably going to need someone to pull up a calendar of the dates of graduation and promotion so we can get
Also
some
finding
commitments.
out if there's going to be a quorum at scholarship night, whenever that is.
When is scholarship night? Do we have that? I have that in my office. I don't have that here.
Bring up the calendar so we can be able to see this.
Scholarship night is May 15th at 6.
So we've got Tuesday, May 15th for scholarship night. I intend to be there.
I do too.
I know Tony will be there.
I will try to be there.
We'll have a quorum for the scholarship night on the 15th, right?
Yes.
I'll put this in one we're talking about, otherwise I'll forget.
Is it going to be at the OHS corridor again? Do we know?
I think that's what it said on the paperwork that I received.
What time did you say again, Jen?
6 p.m.
6 o'clock.
Thank you. Okay, and then the dates of graduations and promotions. Tilly, you want to let us know the first one?
June 1st, Friday, June 1st, Adult High School at 7 p.m.
OHS graduations on the 1st. Who would like to, is available to
I'll do OHS.
hand out the sheet? Okay, OHS. Got Mike, who would like to do OHS?
McFarland, middle school.
So 6 p.m. is when it is, the OHS?
7, I think you just said, didn't you?
7. I'm planning on attending. I can help hand out or not, either way, but I plan on being there.
So Dr. Hurst, I want to ask you this. Was there going to be a change that you're aware of to graduation to need more board members? That you know?
Pete, you know,
I do recall a conversation last year about the efficiency of handing out diplomas and perhaps the logistics of setting up 2 runways so students could come through and parents could have an opportunity to take a picture. We could check in with OHS and their team this week and have a report at the next meeting.
I think even if we had, if they did go that way, just a board member handing and shaking hands would be fine. I'm sure a staff member can hand it's kind of nice to have someone there handing you the diploma to help speed things along. So I think if we have 2 board members, that's important. But so Mike and Tony right now. Okay. And then the next one would probably be promotion, I'm guessing.
Actually, Desert Oasis High School on June 5th, Tuesday, June 5th.
Okay.
Does Talia, do you have a mic, Talia?
What was that?
Do you have a mic? I think it's turned, no, you don't have one. That's why it's quiet. Okay.
That's all right. I'll be
As long as Rob repeats
repeating it. So Desert Oasis is on June 5th, which
And-
is Tuesday.
What time is that? It's coming. It's coming. Don't answer yet, I guess. I would be willing to do Desert Oasis.
I like doing Desert Oasis, so I would like to as well. That's, what time did you say, Talia? You can tell me, I can say it.
It's not listed on the calendar. I will have to find out and I'll let you know.
I want to say that's usually around 7 o'clock as well, 6 or 7, so.
So do all these need to be announced if there's going to be a quorum or just if there's known to be a quorum ahead of time?
Yeah, I think the purpose of right now, just so that Dr. Hurst definitely knows who's going to be there to hand out the diplomas, but as we get closer, and we will need to know about the quorum though, because someone might want to just attend even if they're not handing out any diplomas or certificates. So, so Jen and I at DOHS on the 5th. Okay, and then MMS,
MMS is on June 8th at 10 a.m.
10 a.m., June 8th, Friday. That one's always a difficult one for me just because it's in the middle of the workday, but I'll definitely be doing it next year. So I have a son who's doing it, but
I'd definitely do it this year.
definitely have Ken for MMS. Would anyone else like to do MMS?
If I'm available, there's nothing right now, so I could tentatively help out.
Okay, so tentatively we have Mike and Ken for MMS. That's good. That's 2 for each one. I'm not missing any, am I? 2 for each one as far as who's going to be helping to hand them out, so that's always good. Thank you. Next item, we're going to discuss the NSBA conference that we all attended this weekend, and so I'm just going to start down at the end there. Tony, let us know what your takeaway was.
Yeah, this is the second NSBA conference that I've attended now, every other year. I didn't attend last year, but it's nice to go and get more of a national perspective of what's going on in schools throughout the nation. WASDA's really good, the Washington State Conference that we attend, but it's a different flavor when you're going to presentations for the top schools in the nation versus the top schools in the state. And I have a ton of notes. For me personally, I would like the board to consider having a workshop just to really debrief on what we learned at NSBA and talk about different ideas and talk through. Some of it's operational, and some of it I just wanted kind of, because it's operational, I wanted the opportunity to just kind of go through and say, here's an idea. I thought that was pretty cool, and give Chris the opportunity to say, I want to pursue that or I don't want to pursue it. It's nothing that necessarily needs board action, but but rather than take valuable board meeting time, I'd be more in favor of, at some point, doing a couple-hour workshop to do it, but depends on what the rest of the board thinks. I am
feel
going
like I shouldn't
to
have
be
changed
reviewing
my,
some policies.
April 16th, board study session.
Have to add it back in.
What do you think, Ken?
I definitely agree with Tony. You know, I got a lot out of it, and of course, we all kind of broke up and went to different classes. And we each had the opportunity to go to 8 different breakout sessions for it, and that's quite a bit of information that all the board members took in together, and it would be nice to share a lot of that with the other board members. So, like I said, there was a lot of great things that I learned, new.
And the nice thing from my view is, I've done it as a study session too, is if Dr. Hurst wanted, he could invite some of his other admin team there to hear as well, some of the things we learned, and it could be more of a dialogue rather than not just the board, but a dialogue with us and the admin team. And instead of asking Chris, what do we do here, what do we do there, it might be more efficient too.
What do you think, Jen?
Loved the idea, because I'm all about meetings and talking.
You almost
No,
feel like you
I'm
made it this time.
I'm being serious on that one. I do like talking. I think you guys know that.
Okay.
If at all possible, maybe at noon for this workshop, just because enough of our evenings are tied up. If we could get
I
away
like
with
that suggestion.
doing it at noon, I'd prefer that.
Would
But
that mean that we're only doing an hour then? With you guys' all of our schedules?
Wouldn't mean that for me necessarily.
Not necessarily, no.
It depends on what day of the week for me, I think.
For me, if we were going to do it Monday, it'd be, for me personally, more convenient to just do it right after Chris's speech or whatever that he's doing. Because I'm planning on going to that, and then I can just stay for an extra.
I can say I won't
make
be
a
able to do
morning
that
of
for
it.
sure.
But you have to work.
Yeah.
Some people do have to work, I guess.
Well, I'm scheduled, so I've already got probably my morning probably mostly scheduled.
But noon to 2 would work for me too. It's just,
I could make noon to 2 to work on Monday.
That would work out for me.
I could do
I
Monday
work my
noon to 2.
schedule, so.
All right.
All right, that's
I-
all.
There you
did.
have it. It's
Yeah,
back.
I don't notice, if you noticed, I got on my list, if you kept your list and marked your favorites on the page that they had, I've noticed a couple of the sessions that I took have now currently downloaded some of the class information, so.
Good. So, sorry, I just realized I switched all my staff meetings to be the first and third Mondays of the month, specifically because they weren't board meeting days. So, yeah, we do 2 staff meetings a month, and they're always on that Monday. If I have to, I can change it. I'd rather not.
Are you in town this Wednesday?
like tomorrow you're talking about?
No, next.
This Wednesday is
This
tomorrow.
Wednesday, next Wednesday, a Wednesday.
I can't do, the only day of the week that I could actually do a noon meeting would be a Monday.
Mondays.
I could do it the next Monday too.
And we could
I
do
mean,
the
it's-
following Monday. I could make that work if the board.
That's fine.
23rd?
I know the sooner the better, because the information's still fresh in our minds.
But I could do an evening, but the only day that I'm for sure around is on Mondays.
Could we definitely get an email on that or a note sent to us, reminder?
Okay, so are we saying the 23rd from noon to 2 would be okay?
Good for me.
Am I getting nods from everybody?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Yes, 2 hours.
And then do we have one that evening too, do we not?
Yes.
And a board meeting, yeah.
Okay. Just to make sure I've got all that right.
And that will be here in the boardroom, lunch provided. Is that what the board would like?
Sure.
As long as we don't have to walk to get the food.
Okay, so I just got a note from Dr. Hurst regarding scholarships, since we brought up scholarship night. And so, the applications will come through email. Typically, we have the whole
Packets.
packet. Is it new now? Is it all digital?
So I spoke to Renee, and she said that it's one stack that a lot of committees use. So we cannot take it for days at a time because there's a lot of committees that go to the high school to review these applications and select their candidates. So what I had asked her is if she could just scan them all to my email, so that way it would be more efficient for all of you to have it in your email and select the candidates that way.
Well, we typically do it in a meeting. We go there and just do it in
We
one.
can do that.
We're talking now about the scholarship, right?
Right.
Yes, we're talking about the board scholarship.
Okay. We've done it both ways. We've had them bring them here, but we could also, we've had times where, I know, last time we had a lot of applications, a couple board members just went to the high school and met in their conference room and went through them there and narrowed them down.
She will also let you check them out for the evening. Maybe not with our quantity.
I believe that she will. She just said that she can't let them out for like days at a time, just because there's a lot of committees that already have scheduled times to go and review.
So I think probably the easiest way would be to go to the school and go through these, right? But we
It's not like we
What's
work
the
here, so
deadline
we
that
can
she
go
has to have
wherever.
the answer by?
She didn't give me a deadline, but I could definitely find out. But, I mean, scholarship night is on the 15th of May, so.
I think it's like in 2 weeks or a week from now, actually.
Yeah, I don't think we have time to wait to another board meeting, and so do we want to just set up
Another meeting?
another meeting? It's not that
Gotta
the whole board
love
has to
those
be in this,
meetings.
that's not a requirement.
That just requires a piece
Caden
of
was saying there's
chocolate.
only 30 total scholarship applications that got turned in.
There's not a lot compared to you.
30 applicants,
Just for ours,
period?
is what you're saying?
Period.
The whole
No.
senior class?
Yeah, there's only around
Wow.
30 to 40. There wasn't a lot this year.
I've had other groups tell me that too, that there was hardly any.
Okay. So, who wants to be part of the scholarship selection? It doesn't have to be the entire board. It can be, but it doesn't have to be.
Are we going to do it in 2 stages, or, I want to be part of it, but I would just assume that we did it in 2 stages and narrowed it down to, from 30 to 15 or
Can we,
something.
are we already coming early on the 23rd for that night meeting?
My suggestion is with 30 or 40, just do it
We're
all at
already
once.
interviewing on the 23rd.
Oh, that's right. 23rd, we've got the noon meeting, and we're coming in early for the interviews. That'll be a busy day.
I
Let's
could,
do it
Spouses
on
are
the
gonna be
23rd. That would
loving
my
us.
request.
Yeah.
I could do it the 16th if somebody else, if others can.
So I'm not available on the 16th during
At
lunch
at noon.
but if the other board members would like to do that during that lunch,
You're
that's
saying the
fine.
16th at noon?
Or whatever time, doesn't matter to me. I wouldn't think with 30 applications, it'll take more than an hour, but
Because, yeah, the 16th at noon would work out for me.
And then you're narrowing it to like a few, or what? What's the plan?
well, it sounded like it's whatever the board wants
Yeah,
to do.
my suggestion was just with that many, I think you could get through them and be done with it.
How many?
We have to find out
How
how much
much?
money to, that's
We don't know
that's a
that.
separate issue. So you'll know that number when you go in there. And we've always just, I think in the past, haven't we left it up to the committee that chooses how many to give, or have we decided as a board together?
We
before
decided
that?
as a board.
And I bet we don't have that number tonight about, it's another thing is we get, as a board, we get updated on here's the money that's in the fund for the scholarships, so we can decide how many recipients and how much we're going to give. So we don't have that information tonight. But that's something I'm sure that can get emailed to us.
And we usually, the reason why my memory is why we usually wait till after we've seen all the applicants is because there may be a pool where we feel like all 4 deserve it, and there may be a pool where we feel like there's just 2. and
Okay, I
change our.
must have misunderstood. I thought you said we decided it beforehand.
We've
we
always
decide at the
decided
time.
when we were doing it.
Okay,
We
That's
just,
easier
the
then. We don't
full
have to
board
worry.
came in and we knew the total amount of the scholarship but we've always made the final decision, from my memory, as a full board of who's going to
so
get
we'll
it.
just make sure that the board members doing the selection are aware of the amount available, and then we'll make that call based on the applicants.
And if you can't be there, I guess as long as you're okay with I'd feel more comfortable if there was at least a quorum of the board there.
I think I could do the 16th. We're talking noon, right? I think.
We'll need to announce that quorum as well. Okay, so, the board
And
would like
it's
to meet
actually-
at the high school at noon on the 16th.
Did you want to meet at noon?
I think we just met in the
Just wanna-
principal's office one time because there's a little bit of a conference room, right?
You just want to clarify that it's, at least in the past, we've dedicated it as an executive session because we are talking about private student information. So while we have a quorum, we've done the start of the meeting, recessed an executive session, reviewed the applications.
Yeah. Okay,
That my interpretation of the RCW is that's
and we would like
legal.
all applicants because we don't have criteria that some of the other scholarships have, so. Okay. Anything else on that? Is everyone clear on what our plans are? Okay. We will move on to discussion regarding live video options for future board meetings. So this was born of the discussions that have happened off and on about the ability to comment during our live board meetings, but then there's no response to the comments, and so sometimes comments are made without a response or clarification, and there's an assumption that that's whatever the comment was must be true, and I think we learned that we could not shut off comments, and so I think there's a couple, Dr. Hurst has found
To
about a
add
couple
to that,
options.
the way I understand the process now is we're doing it on Facebook Live, but then it's being changed. Somebody's using time to change it from that format to go onto YouTube later and uploading it to that. Is that
There's a
my
conversion
understanding?
process, I think, that takes place. I'm getting nods back here.
And so,
from Rigo.
to me, it's twofold. It's not only that, it's just if, I had heard that there may be an easier way to do it that would be
Yeah.
more seamless for the community.
And that's what, so Dr. Hurst has some
district.
information to share.
Come on down, Rigo.
Oh, well, we're going to the boss, the IT boss. That's who I was talking about.
On Facebook Live, you can't turn off comments.
We can't hear you in your mic. I think it's not because it's high enough.
So on Facebook Live, we can't turn off comments. So there is another method. There's what we can do is we can use YouTube, stream the YouTube channel to that, and then be able to turn off comments there. So that way nobody will be able to comment. So we can do that. The stuff that we have allow for that. As far as like we've been testing out this new product that we just have here, we're able to be able to stream directly to our YouTube channel. As far as the information where when the board meeting is done on Facebook Live, yes, we have to download it. So as soon as this meeting is over, we would have to download it to our computers overnight. And then when it comes in the morning, we have to upload it up to YouTube. And then we send Talia a link. So that is extra time that we have to put in on doing that. And it takes a long process because depending on how big the video is, it's like 2 to 3 hours in an upload.
So I have a question for you, just to make it easy for the public as well. Is there a way that that you can, is it possible, I'm not a technology junkie, but is it possible when you do YouTube Live to embed some kind of a link that says click here if you have questions, and it would go to the board director's site where they could click on one of our emails and send us a question that way instead of in the virtual world? You know what I'm saying?
So sorry.
I believe you're excuse me. I believe you're asking if we can have sort of like a button on the YouTube channel where it'll direct to the website. Yes, we can do that.
Yeah, like if somebody's watching it and they have a question, they could click on it and it would go to a list of our emails, and they could email Jen because they like Jen.
Yes.
And ask her question, and she could respond. That way we still get questions and comments from the meeting, but it's not in a blogged public discussion format where everybody else discusses it but the board.
Can you put a link to the live feed on YouTube on the Facebook site?
Yes,
Okay. So is there a way to turn off YouTube comments?
yes. On the YouTube channel itself, you can turn off comments completely. Facebook, you cannot.
Right, okay. Can we also put a link that they could go then to our agenda so that they could follow along with the agenda? And like if we're watching a video or seeing a presentation, because I know that you can't really see what's happening over there?
Yes, you can. In the YouTube videos, you can add a description right below the video, and you could say, we have a full presentation here, if you would like to click on that.
In a live feed as well?
Yes.
You need to teach a YouTube channel at the middle school and the high school, please.
So a little bit about the product.
Or at least to my sons.
So a little bit about the product that we're actually doing. We're actually are running a picture-in-picture, so they are seeing what's currently on the board. So they are doing that.
Is that a new camera over there?
So we have that camera going over there.
He said new, but he didn't say picture-in-picture.
Yeah, so so right now, during this public content area, we are just showing the board. But once you guys start digging into the actual
Presentations and stuff,
presentations
right.
and stuff, we will be able to do a picture-in-picture and go from there. So we are testing that product out tonight, and so far it's been working really well.
I like the YouTube idea. It seems to me on the surface anyway, it actually fulfills the board's attention better than the way we're doing it now, but.
Okay. What do you think, Ken?
No, I agree with the YouTube. It gives us another alternative besides Facebook. I know there's a lot of controversy around Facebook the last few weeks, and I don't know if any of the board members have actually ever had a chance to sit down and watch one of the meetings. Unfortunately, that's how I watched the last meeting, was sitting down and watching on the Facebook and from my hotel room. And I'm sorry to say, it looks like the meetings go pretty slow. It was a long time sitting there
It
watching
doesn't feel that way when
meeting.
you're actually here.
No, it don't. So when you're watching it from that end, but I was surprised because you could also watch the numbers that were watching it at the same time, and they were staying in the 100 range. But I'm very pleased that we're looking at another way to view this, to give our customers more of an option to view the meetings.
Okay. What do you think, Mike?
I agree. Any opportunity to, as long as there's, again, I know we use this word quite a bit, transparency, where I don't want the public or any stakeholder to think that we're excluding them or we're trying to purposely not hear a comment. That's not the intent. The matter is where we're not able to get a direct response that night to them, and then someone else will see the comment who thinks they know what they're talking about, and they put their 2 cents worth, and at the end of the night, it's not really about what the topic was. So it's not about excluding anyone, but if there's a way where they can hit a link, if they have a question at the end of the night that gets to either one of us, or a specific link where we all have, or a spokesman for the group or somebody's, just so we don't have 5 of us saying 5 different things. Something like that, I think, would be very beneficial.
And we already know the protocol when a community member asks us questions, and at least it's in board policy, so we should know the protocol anyway. So we should know as a board, that if questions are operational, refer them to Chris and those kind of things. But at least that way, I like the idea of that, because at least that way the questions are actually getting to board members. I'd love to ask questions from the community when I get them, but it's hard for me to go on Facebook and enter the fray there.
And technically, the board president speaks for the board, but I think in this day and age of media, that's like if the newspaper calls, right? But I would just say, make sure as board members, always be careful that if there's factual information that's being asked, share the facts, and then if you don't know them, direct them in the right direction. If it's just opinion, make sure you're clarifying, this is my opinion, and not necessarily the opinion of the board, if that's the case. Kate, what do you think about YouTube?
I think that's a good idea, just because not everybody has like a Facebook account, or they don't use it because of the issue going on now. So I think having access to the board directly through a website that's open to the public and open to everyone, where you don't have to put in your actual information, your personal information, is really good.
That's another great point that wasn't even brought up, so thank you. But I think that you're talking about, Ken mentioned, I like that we're looking at this. Because board meetings, this is a board decision, we could give that directive tonight, that that's the way we want our meetings to start to be televised. I don't think televised is even the right word to say, right? That's old.
YouTubeized?
That's old jargon.
Yes.
Streamed.
Streamed, yeah.
Thank you. So I believe the board, we can get consensus on that.
I'd like
It
to
sounds
do
like
that.
everyone would like to go that way. Is it something that we can do essentially immediately, because it's just a matter of using it in a different format? I don't mean to utilize it
Like
tonight's
right now,
meeting,
we're
but
going
I
to
mean-
shut the Facebook off.
Yeah,
meeting.
so yeah, we can do it at the next board meeting, just start doing it there.
Okay.
So that's not a problem.
All right, if the board feels comfortable with that, then I would say that we'll have a different look next meeting.
Great.
Thank you. The next item is discussion regarding Safe Schools Forum. So this was because the meeting after the forum, we had two board members that weren't here, and we just felt that we should have an opportunity for everyone to bring their feelings and thoughts from that forum. And so, did the three of us talk about it a little bit?
The three of us did talk about it, I think, a little bit,
We
but
just wanted to bring it up again so that Tony and Ken also had an opportunity to voice their opinions.
I think it was great. I loved the turnout, but I don't think it should stop there. I think we should continue it. A couple of the courses I took, classes that I took down there was to deal with school safety. And it was nice to hear from all the other school district nationwide and some of their ideals that they are doing that we could take a look at as an option for school safety. So like I said, I don't want it to just stop there. I hope we could do this again in the future, within the next few months again. Bring in that same panel, even if it's at a roundtable discussion, to work it out, to work on these other issues.
Okay. What would you want to achieve from the next meeting, Ken?
Not necessarily policy change. To open up the more lines of communications between everybody, make sure they're clear amongst everybody, and then relaying that back to the public. That, everybody says they've got safe schools. I mean, that's the thing that we heard. Everybody's got safe schools, but there's also always that one issue that happens that we got to defend against.
Okay. Tony, what?
I thought the forum itself was really good, and I noticed, I'm not sure which board member, but I've read a policy that a board member wrote that is not passed yet, but I know we're going to have some more discussion on it later, so it'll be interesting to hear that discussion. But I always think anytime we can get community involvement, it's a great thing. And from my perspective, it's a controversial issue, it's an emotional issue, and I was pleasantly surprised with, I think Othello showed his character that night, in that there was no chairs thrown and nobody cussing at each other, because it's an emotional topic, especially when it comes to what we should do. And I really appreciated the respect the community had for each other and for the board that night.
Caden had made a comment at, I don't even know what meeting anymore. We only have a few, that students didn't feel like, I know there were some students that actually had something to say, but there were not a lot of students there. Could we go to one or more schools and have a forum with students so they could express their opinions? They see things differently. And that's who we're talking about. They're directly affected.
I've got a really quick question or suggestion on that. And this was brought up at one of the things. And we have SurveyMonkey. I don't know if all the students have an email address linked with their Chromebooks that they're giving, but it's possible to run a survey using SurveyMonkey with the students to have a few questions with them, and that would be a good link with the students. If we
Can I
could do
make a
that.
comment on that? In the past, we have had surveys for our Husky Futures, and basically the principal will send out a school-wide email to all of our email addresses, and we'll get them. There has been many inappropriate responses. We've had kids actually email back, and it's been sent out to the whole school, so everyone receives the student's email saying, this is dumb, this is boring, why are we even doing this? Like, so I don't know if that would actually work, just because of past experiences with surveys and students taking it seriously and the respect for it.
The only question I would have there is I do believe you'd get students' opinion. I'm just not sure that if you got 400, 300, the whole student body together, that you would get any opinions that were any different than the community's opinion. Because just from my view, there's people that want to do X or want to do Y. I'm not sure that there'd be any, unless you know of something unique that they would come back and say, we should do this that was never discussed. I don't know if there'd be anything new. In other words, besides hearing some students are for some things and some students are against some things.
You would probably hear the same thing, but I think the students' biggest concerns is that we love our teachers, but a lot of students, they're like, I wouldn't trust my teacher with a gun. And that's when the community, at the forum, I believe there was actually like a lot of support saying like, do whatever you can to protect our students. But then the students are like, I don't feel safe that way. So I think that's the biggest thing that you guys would hear, and that's something that we did hear from students, from some students that were brave enough to speak up at the forum. So you might get some of the same things. I personally don't know the views of everyone at the school, so they might have something different.
Well, and it couldn't be the whole student body. There's no way 1,000 people could talk to us. So we would have to, except for maybe at Desert Oasis is probably the only school that could really do it. We would have to either visit a couple of classrooms or, I don't know. But I think that they need to know that they have a say, that they can come and talk to us, that they're who we're talking about and they're important. And I think that they may be able to come up with some better solutions or some better ideas or some better comments than what we currently even have.
I don't disagree with you. But at the same time, if we left everything up to what students want, there'd be kids with holes everywhere on their pants
Right.
and wearing inappropriate
I'm not saying
clothes
everything,
and,
right.
I mean, at some
Yes.
point, it's not about what's popular. It's about what's best. And I'm not against doing that kind of forum, but my personal preference would be is let's get to where we talk about this policy, and if the policy does pass, then let's have a forum about the policy that the board passed, or having Dr. Hirsch present, now that the board's passed this policy, here's what I'm going to do and here's my timeline. I would rather have something that's more, instead of just let's just stand still and have 5 more forums about the same thing. Let's make some progress and then have another forum based on that, from my view.
So, kind of was going to ask that question, if the board decides that they like the EL20 policy that's been recommended, essentially we're putting that on Dr. Hirsch then to make those things happen. And so we could have forums. We could also just have an expectation that the Dr. Hirsch, the school district, is having forums as well that we can attend. Whether we're up in the panel or not, we could attend and hear the discussion. So I wanted to kind of get a feel from the board if you thought that this is something that we need to drive or that we could delegate to the district based on policy.
I think the board should drive it.
Okay.
That's how the public's going to come back to us and ask us. They've empowered us to protect their kids too, along as well as district. But
Right. They
us
could
too.
see the policy as you're just passing the buck and not deciding. I'm not saying that's what it is. I'm saying it's giving opportunity, but that could be interpreted that way.
So are you thinking the board needs to drive the discussions?
In all due respect, I think we should wait until we discuss the policy rather than just discuss it for 45 minutes now and then
Yeah.
discuss it again in an hour.
Policy's gonna
Okay,
be.
well, I wanted us to kind of come to a conclusion of what we're going to do next, so if everyone's okay with just wait until after we talk about the policy before we decide what we're going to do, I'm fine with that too.
That's fine.
Okay. Any other comments about the forum itself that the board wants to talk about? Okay. The next item, so this, I'm going to let you talk about this, Tony. Tony presented a letter of support for Dr. Hurst, and I want him to explain the purpose, and then the letter is also on here as an attachment. So go ahead, Tony.
I think the letter kind of speaks for itself, but if the board's okay, I wouldn't mind reading the letter just so that those that don't have access to it can at least listen to the letter before the board discusses it, so they have a reference for what we're going to discuss, if that's okay. But I think the letter itself is self-explanatory once it's read. Is that,
Okay.
that'd be okay?
Well, I think the board's read it. Everyone's on the board.
The board has, but when we have a discussion about a 4-paragraph letter in public setting and the public hasn't read it, for context is all I was saying.
Okay, so tell me what your request is again?
That I be allowed to read the letter.
Oh, yes. Please do.
Okay.
Sorry, I got sidetracked.
Just wanted to ask permission first. The letter, the way I wrote it is as follows, and it would be a letter from the board to the community. Recently, the community was informed of the intention of the Othello School District to begin transitioning our schools to a new K-8 format. This process is going to be a collaborative one stretching over the next 12 to 18 months. As part of the initial stage of this process, Dr. Hurst made the following announcement to the school board and the community. Quote, "There are many exciting things happening in the Othello School District, along with some big changes. To ensure that all students are achieving success and graduating with the essential skills to compete with all students across the world, we have work to do. In order to get us there, our district is implementing an innovative vision that includes a rigorous course of integrated curricula, design thinking, project-based learning, STEAM, which is science, technology, engineering, arts, and math, early literacy, and more. Additionally, we will be reconfiguring our schools to a K-8 model. That means all Othello elementary schools and middle schools will open
A couple of changes that I would like to make. Can we do that already?
You can suggest them.
Okay. 3rd paragraph, very last word. It says policies with an apostrophe, no apostrophe. And the timeline, it says 12 to 18 months. I think it should say 12 to 36. I would rather give us more and finish early. Because there's still going to be a transition even if we're done in 8 months. So those were my only specifics. I like the wording on everything else.
I'm cool with the clarification. As far as the timeline, I just went off Dr. Hurst's timeline because I don't believe that he's asked the board's opinion on the timeline or asked our permission or approval or any of that, and nor do I believe he needs to. So if you change the timeline, you'd be
Is that
giving
part of
Dr.
his-
Hurst a directive.
Oh, I see. But that's not part of his specific quote, right? That you took out the
1920 school year is in his quote.
Right.
I'm not for or against that. I'm just not really for directing the superintendent at this point as just one board member.
I can see what you're saying. Mhm.
Policies is definitely a misspelling, though.
I should have taken English more seriously in college.
Okay. So any other suggestions for corrections from the board?
I already gave Tony mine, and like I said,
I changed it.
and then, like I say, we're going to be reviewing it a little bit later under the superintendent report. So what I got for a matter of time, I'll state them there.
Okay.
Same paragraph, 2 sentences above the misspelled policies. We have those polices in our public board meeting. Another misspell of policies.
Spell check wouldn't have fixed that.
I know. We usually, when we do these
catch.
policies, have somebody in the district wordsmith the
Right.
grammatical errors out. I think we can, if we want to have the statement, I'm sure that we can have somebody
Give it
that's
to the English department and let them.
educated
students,
grammatically.
right.
I also noticed you gave the acronym meaning for STEAM. I think we should include that there as well.
I only did that because I was quoting another statement that Dr. Hurst made.
No, yeah,
I
I just think
see.
it's important that, I mean, we know what it meant, and I know you did it from your knowledge, your vast knowledge.
I'm
so-
okay with that. I just didn't want to change Dr. Hurst's
A
quote.
direct quote.
So with Dr. Hurst's permission, I'm okay with changing it, but it is inside of quotes, and so.
I'm definitely fine with that.
So
You get in trouble for misquoting people, you know.
I think that what I'm assuming that Tony is looking for here is if the board feels as a whole that we agree with this statement of support and that the board would feel comfortable with this statement of support being something that is published with our name on it. Am I correct in that?
Correct.
Tony? And so
I don't know if that requires an actual motion or a consensus or what.
yeah, I don't know if this needs an action for a vote, but I think consensus is important. And so I guess I'll just ask, is we're looking for, if it's just a head nod of, or verbal support.
Do you want to go one by one so that we're clear?
I'm
Obviously,
assuming
I'm
you're
in
a yes.
support of it. I wrote it.
What are your thoughts, Ken?
As the rest of the board knows, I know how I stand on the position right at this moment. There's several parts in there I just quite don't agree with, but I am willing to learn. Until I understand those things, I'm not ready to step up to the board on that yet.
Good.
I think as it is written, we're saying we support him and his vision. It doesn't, I don't think it necessarily says, and we're all for K-8, but we're supporting him and his direction, his vision, and that's part of the direction he's taking. So I agree with the way it is written. With those minor grammatical
There's probably more if somebody studies it.
Mike, what do you think?
I agree with the intent of the statement. And this is not, like Jen says, a direct all in, all for. Wholeheartedly stand behind the vision that Dr. Hurst and his team have. And we had the discussion at the last board meeting. There's a lot of variables to this transformation. There's a lot of stuff, there's a lot of questions that the public still has, our stakeholders still have, and we're going to learn about these things. I made the statement at the last meeting that all I ask is that everybody comes to the table open-minded, so that we can all learn together, that we come to the table with the end result being the first thing on our minds. This is to better our kids. The only thing that's going to change is change. So if we don't change with it, we're not going to change. So I agree with the statement.
So what I'm inclined to do with this, because I think it's important that obviously when a quorum, or a majority, I mean, agrees with something or decides something, then that is what the board has decided. But I think it's also important that you can let the public know where you stand, and we do that through voting. And so I'm going to ask for a motion on this, if I could, and then we can get the vote recorded. And so we will have a decision as a board, but it'll be known what each individual's feelings were. Okay? So I will accept a motion.
I move that we create this letter of support as an official document. Where are you going? What do you want me to say here? Sorry.
Sounded good to me.
Okay, great.
Second.
I don't think we should add the rest of the stuff afterwards, but I think the motion.
Okay, sure.
All right, there's been a motion by Director Stevenson to accept this document as an official document of support from the board. There's been a second by Director Ashton. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries 4-1. Okay. Good discussion, board. This is the next one is an item that I said we're just going to keep on here for a while, and we've renamed it to discussion on future facility needs. So I just this will be in board reports for a while, I think. So is there any new things that the board wants to bring up or insights about facilities as we go forward?
There's some comments that I would like to make, but it's also under superintendent comments. And so I think I want to hold my comments until we get to that part, because they're very specific to them.
Okay.
When's the next time that we monitor EL10? Do you happen to have that?
I'll bring it up right now.
Does that get in here? No. Oh,
I don't think it
Probably
shows the
till you
monitoring
do it.
dates.
other required reports and visits.
EL 10, July 25th.
I knew she beat me to it.
July 23rd? Okay. I want to write a revision to EL10, but I don't have it prepared yet, so that may prompt more discussion too on facility needs, but
Okay.
I don't want to wait that long till July 10th, so I think I'll maybe submit it to you for the next board meeting.
All right. Ken, do you have any specific facility needs, things you'd like to bring up in this section?
Not in this session, just in our superintendent's report.
Okay.
I
What
think.
about you, Mike?
As well.
I'll just make the comment. So my feeling is now with the moving forward with K through 8 reconfiguration, it changes this discussion significantly, and so I think it adds some other options potentially, and so I think it's too soon really to have specific instructions about facility needs as well. So I'm sure those are some items you guys want to bring up later. Okay. And then this might fit in with it too, and it might be a short discussion, but it was there as a carryover discussion because we hadn't finished talking about it, but discussion regarding transfer of money from general fund to capital projects. Director Ashton had brought that up a few meetings ago.
it's another one of those things that I'm certain is going to come up when we go to administrative reports as well. But in light of the things that I've researched since then, as just one board member, and where we're at financially in our district, and with these changes that we're going to discuss here in a few minutes, I'm not in favor of pursuing a transfer of money at this point anymore.
Okay. Did any other board members have any strong feelings about that? Want to add to that? All right, so it won't be on the future board discussions unless it comes up again and is requested. One thing I forgot to ask about earlier, before we move out of this section, is that there was a request or a question of whether or not the board felt that we should advertise for the student rep on Facebook. And I felt that we should ask the board what the feelings, what their preference would be on that.
A board member had a question, or?
No, this was just, Tilly had asked me, should we advertise for that on Facebook? I said I'd like to talk to the board about that first.
My feeling would be to ask the student rep if kids are on Facebook anymore. Or,
Maybe on Instagram.
Or what the intent is, or if it's the intent is to get their parents to go tell them they need to do it, or, I'm making an assumption.
Well, I don't know if there was any
from the
intent
kids I
behind
talked
the
to.
recommendation or the request. It was just a matter
Yeah, just
of,
to be more public, but I'd just be
should
curious.
we or not? So
If it reaches kids, I'm all for it, but I don't know if it will reach any kids.
Well, from my personal experience, no, kids don't really go on Facebook anymore because it has been kind of taken over by the parents. But if you do want to get it out more, because I know when I ran, the only way we found out about it was our principal called us in and told us about it. They didn't really advertise it to the school. They just kind of selected students from there. So to get the word out more, yeah, I think that would help. I don't know if it would reach students more than parents, though.
So what's happening this year, Kaden? Are you hearing much about the?
I have not heard much of anything.
I don't know if there's a problem with reaching the parents, because sometimes the parents will be the one to go, hey,
You're going to do it.
retard. This is how I would talk to my children. You're going to fill out this application. Maybe not quite that.
My only hesitation is I want students on the student rep panel because they want to be there, not because mom and dad say
Right,
you
but
have to show
sometimes
up,
they need
and
to
then
be
they're not
guided
gonna
by
do it.
someone saying, hey, this would really be a great idea. You remember how you wanted to do this? You need leadership. This is going to get you there.
My concern is that we have had an issue with the word not getting out in the high school, and that bothers me a
Right.
lot because I think every year we talk about it,
Yes.
and it sounds like it's happening again.
I don't know if that's what they're doing this I know I can talk to my leadership teacher. We can get it put in the morning announcement, so it's announced every day until the day the applications are due, if that would help too.
Isn't there a way to send out a notification by email to the student body without having the problem if a student replies, that it replies to everyone? Isn't there a way to do that? I'm not a technological genius, but I know through, like, in my work, through constant contact and other ways, I can send individual emails out to thousands of people, and when they respond, it only goes to me. And so I don't know why we're not using technology like that to send every junior an email to the
Every
individual email account.
sophomore.
Every sophomore, whoever it is.
For
every
incoming
sophomore.
juniors next
Incoming
year.
junior.
Can you do that with Snapchat?
I don't think you can do that in Snapchat.
Right now, we have 2 applicants. I was given that information, so. I would like
But
see
to
a lot
me,
more.
something like that is better than Facebook. If you,
Directly contact the student.
So I'm getting a no, a yes.
I don't care. I just
Are
don't
we
think
back on the
it's gonna-
Facebook, or are we talking about now the email concept?
No, this whole question was just about whether or not we should
Put on
put it on
Facebook.
Facebook.
So Caden, you feel like you could do some things to get more some applicants in?
Yeah, I can do
You're-
it. I can do some things personally to promote it in the school. Our leadership class can put up flyers, we can make a poster, we can announce it every day in the morning announcements.
So-
We can do stuff to directly get it to the students rather than social media, if you guys are more comfortable with that.
So I think as a student trying to recruit another student, I think we should leave it up to Caden to pursue this.
I'm not
further.
against Facebook because it's easy to do, but I just don't think it's going to have a lot of impact.
We know you love Facebook, Tony. No
I'm
one
on
said that wrong.
it. I'm on it all the time, but I don't think the students are.
Caden, if you could remind Isabella as well to do it at DOHS?
Yes, what day is the official deadline for the applications?
17th.
As
17th.
opposed to the fake deadline?
Opposed to the deadline that I'm not aware of. And then interviews are on the 23rd.
Yes.
Okay.
What do you think, Mike? You agree with all that? Okay, so it sounds like a no to Facebook. We're leaving it up to our student reps to get the word out.
And Kaden, if you could just let all the students know that they could pick up the application in the main office.
Okay.
And tell the main office to make lots of copies,
Okay.
because you're going to be
Is-
totally on it.
Is there a way they could download an application and stick, picking one up too?
That would probably have to go on Facebook.
They could download it from the district website.
From the district website?
So do you want me to say that, or you can download it from that?
Yeah.
Okay.
If somebody at the district puts it on the website, it could be downloaded,
We
but
can
otherwise
just
you
do it.
can't.
Give her a mic. Why does she not have a mic today?
So we cannot put it on the website because we cannot put a PDF on our website because of accessibility laws. So we would have to direct them to contact so-and-so to get a download.
Really? Even to put a blank form on a website?
Yeah, so, because it's a PDF and we cannot upload those type of
Can you
PDFs.
put it at JPEG?
JPEG or?
No.
JPEG we can. We can put a JPEG. We just need to put like what the image is of, but I'm not sure how accessible that's going to be to print and then.
Can we just
fill
make
out.
sure they're at the office?
Main office. We can just make sure they're at the main office, and I can also announce to talk to me or Isabel if you have any
In
questions.
paper form, maybe? That's, I can't believe this about the PDFs.
Yeah.
I wouldn't fill it out if I couldn't do it on my fillable,
Right. Me too.
because I can't. My handwriting's a lot worse than my typing skills.
Does Pete had a comment also on this topic?
Yeah, I just I appreciate Caden's willingness to take that on and assist with the advertising. But I also want us to make sure that we recognize we have a couple of applications. How did those students become aware? How did they know to apply? And that we also focus on what have we done to get the message out, and perhaps why aren't students taking that opportunity? That there's some work to be done there as well. I just don't want it to feel like that high school hasn't made a strong effort to get the word out. And is it just another message over the intercom that students are starting to ignore, and do we reignite that? So I just wanted to recognize that, we do have a couple folks that are interested, and it's a challenging position, and to get folks that want to take it seriously. I don't want to be represented that high school hasn't put out a decent effort.
Okay. Okay, so are there any board reports that I might have forgotten? Good.
We haven't made the section long enough yet.
Well, I already went over 20 minutes on it. Apologize. I'm going to blame Jen. Student rep reports now. Caden, you're up.
Okay, I have one report, and it's kind of a long one. So it's about Project Bridges, and basically before spring break, I got in contact with Cheryl Kretzky, and I know we are aiming towards the middle of May, kind of, and we didn't want it in the middle of the week because turnout wasn't as big as it was in the year before, just because we thought it was on a Wednesday. And then we tried to stay away from Fridays because of sports, so when I emailed her, I asked her if there was any Mondays available, and she said no, but she could rearrange the schedule, so the 7th is, but that is a board meeting day. But that is the only day available in May.
We could have it right in here.
Did we decide that was an incorrect date on the calendar the other
Oh,
day?
was it in? That'd be wonderful.
Because isn't it the 2nd and 4th, and for some reason our calendar has
Okay.
it
Yeah, the
wrong.
7th couldn't possibly be a second Monday, ever.
Okay, so Bridges is on the 7th of May.
We
Let's
do need to
clarify
get
that.
public notification out for that, though, because it's wrong in our calendar, or we need to change it. Because both board meetings in May are wrong.
Yeah.
Yep. Thank you for the reminder.
So it will be at MMS again on the stage. I am getting a flyer. It should be done by the end of the week, and I should be able to have them up at all the schools and maybe even some businesses. And I'm also starting a letter to all the principals that they should have at the end of the week so they're aware and they can start preparing their presentation.
So the 7th, did you say a time?
The 7th. Right now, the time is not set just because I need to make sure I put in enough time to set up, to take down. So I am planning around either 5:30 or 6 because I know a lot of people get off of work at 5. So we want to have the ability to get as many people there that want to come. So it'll either start at 5:30 or 6. Any questions?
That's a food thing, right? A dinner?
So in the past, what we did last year was we did all the presentations out where the stage was, all the bleachers were pulled out, and then afterwards there was like little snacks in the gym where you could go if you wanted to. I don't know if a lot of people did because they wanted to get home. And I know the year before that they ate while the presentations were going on, which kind of was a big distraction. So on the food front, I don't know if you guys still want to incorporate food with it, or you would rather just take that out and have it be presentations, community, done. It's up to you guys. I will plan
I think
whatever.
it's up to you.
Oh.
It's your show.
Your thing.
This is so stressful.
Decisions are
Can I
hard.
get board opinions on the food front?
I think, okay, I've only been to, I think, the first
Carnitas.
one, and I think that it was a dinner. Was that the one you were talking about? Everyone ate while the presentations
Yeah,
happened?
so everyone was eating during the presentation, so not a lot of people like watch the presentations. So I know the idea last year was that we wanted the focus to be on the schools. So that's why we changed it. I just don't know which one worked better.
Have you been
for
given
you guys.
an unlimited budget?
Oh, I have a budget?
I'm sure if it cost $1 million, we have an issue.
As I recall, the first instance when we ran the program, it was the school's responsibility and often their PTAs to provide some sort of meal for the groupings. I think last year what was decided is that workload on top of putting together a presentation, that we would just back it off and just have the snacks. And I think that was the preferred model, at least by the sites.
Okay. Then we will get snacks.
Unless you can get PTAs to provide the food or whatever.
Okay, this is my first year doing it, and I wasn't really involved a lot last year because of everything that was like going on at the time. So in order to do that, would I have to contact them through the principal? I don't know how to do that.
The principals will have the contact information for each of those people. I could probably give you most of them.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you. And I have, Cheryl Kretzky has involved Mrs. French, so we know the technology setup and who's setting up what and the responsibilities.
Great. So I'll quickly touch on the board. That was actually, we discovered that this weekend, I think, right, that the board meetings were not correct. So board meetings should be the 14th, and then it would be the 28th, but the 28th is Memorial Day. So it'll actually be the 14th and 29th of May, just by policy, because that's the second and fourth Monday, and then we have it the next day if it's on a holiday. What we will need to do is have the calendar in policy review at our next board meeting to make a correction or approve a correction to the calendar for that. Okay. All right.
Due to the length of the meeting, I excused the student rep after her report, just so the board knows.
All right. Okay, now we moved on to item C, the administrative information, and we'll start with required approvals. We'll accept a motion.
I make a motion that we approve the required approvals.
Been a motion by Director Stevenson,
Second.
second by Director Garza. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Now we're up to superintendent comments. Dr. Hurst, there are a few different items in there. The order that you present is up to you. You can just let us know.
Great. We're going to present first on the communication plan, and then we're going to follow up with Pete Perez talking about portable follow-up, and then we'll have Dr. Boda come to us with the cash flow explain presentation. So we'd like to share with everyone the communication plan that we have discussed with our leadership team on reimagining Othello schools. The first portion just talks about our instructional vision. The situation analysis gives a brief summary about hiring me as a superintendent, and then development of the Othello instructional vision, and then collaborative conversations that we had this year around our next step in implementing the vision, which includes several elements. As we scroll down, you can see in our communication plan, we have targeted audiences, we have internal and external audiences, and without reading all of them, you can see that we really targeted everyone, from teachers, students, staff, to also parents, community members, business partners, and also university officials. As you look at our objectives, there's 6 major objectives. If we can scroll down a little bit. You can see the first objective is to clearly define the major components of the district vision using relatable terms and examples, and I'm going to go into a little detail explaining that. But I just want to clarify everything that you'll hear from me this evening about the communication plan is part of the vision. So even though there's significant conversation recently about K-8 reconfiguration, that is part of the vision that we have described since I've been hired as superintendent. But we did spell it out in item number 2. Part of our communication plan is really to educate the public about K-8 configuration, and number 3 is to justify the why to the entire community. Number 4, we really want to focus also in this communication plan around any fears, tensions around especially the K-8 configuration. I know that's been a topic of discussion, but also in number 5, rally supporters who will serve as champions for the entire vision. And again, there's several elements of the vision to include K-8 configuration. And then number 6, you'll see we also want to address any misperception, any misinformation that may be out there amongst the public. So as you look at the strategies, you can see that this is a draft in progress. We are currently working on this as a team, and we have our Director of Communications, Molly Curtis, that's actually working with us to develop fully our communication plan. So when you look at strategy number 1 or objective 1, it's really defining the major components of the district vision. As you can see, we really want to stay away from educational jargon and just really educate everyone, which in plain terms. And I can share with you elements of the vision I've shared with the community before and with the board of directors. There's several elements to include global competencies, project-based learning, we have design thinking, we have world language, we have early literacy also, and we have others. So we don't want anyone to lose the essence of the entire vision. Those are all elements of the vision, but we also have part of it as K-8 configuration. And there's others. So as you can see, as you go down, we want to provide concrete examples and really illustrate how each element of the vision relates to our students. So what we have shared is K-8 configuration by itself will not address all of the issues, but if you look at the entire vision overall, it will. So we want to really explain that to our community, and we also want to highlight the positive work that's being done, and we recognize that elements of our vision is happening across our district right now, so we want to make sure that we communicate that to our community also. And the number 2, you'll see that our objective is to also educate the public about K-8 grade configuration. And we wanted to pull this element out, even though I shared there's a number of elements, just really spending a lot of time on this component. And as I shared, when we say involving the community, all means all. Anyone that wants to be involved can be involved. Part of the meeting on the 16th will be to describe how we will get everyone involved and how they can sign up for each one of these groups that I just shared. But when you look at 2.1, you can see it really deals with research behind K through 8 configuration. When you look at 2.2, we want to actually provide presentations to the staff and community. As we say staff, we're not negating the students because they're intricate part of the conversation, so they're included. Also utilizing local media to get the word out, share our journey, share our story. And then really we want to give board members the tools, equip them with the knowledge also and information to be able to talk to constituents. So that's part of 2.4. And really understand the why. So why are we moving in this direction also? 2.5 really talks about talking points for board members also, so they understand and know how to respond to the constituents as I just shared. And then 2.6 is really big, so as we move in this direction, K through 8, really providing professional development for all staff on how we're going to transform to K through 8. When you look at strategy number 3, it really talks about justifying the why to the entire Othello community. So really demonstrating how the K through 8 research directly applies to our schools, our communities. Why are we moving in this direction? Providing a history that brings the audience up to speed on how we came to this decision. So talking in depth about the research. Why we're moving in this direction with K through 8 configuration. And then when you look at objective 4, it really deals with easing fears and tensions around K through 8 configuration. We're really looking at different audiences, platforms we can share a word. Also in 4.2, uncover specifics to staff and community members. Any discomfort or resistance that they may have, we really want to address that in these meetings. And 4.3 really talks about developing a clear plan that outlines how we will make the configuration happen by the 1920 school year. And just a point of clarity also, I have talked to leadership, my leadership team, executive. The timeline is 2020, but we understand also that there's things that guide us also in the conversation. One of it is resources and budget. So we know that we have to be aware of it. But the timeline is 1920, so we wanted to clarify that. Under objective 5, we really want to rally supporters, people who's going to serve as champions, and we've talked a lot about the guiding coalition. And really these are the people who are doing a first level of work, the initial work. And one of the things I'll say about the guiding coalition, it's a subset of the community. It's everyone, all voices. So thinking about students, business partners, parents, teachers, staff. These are people who are working now and they're coming up with an initial product or initial ideas, but clarifying that the way that this is set up, if you look at the entire vision, so we look at all those different elements, at least 8, what needs to happen is that guiding coalition is going to do some initial work. They're going to present that initial work to those teams, and those teams get to explore, pull apart, ask questions, develop new ideas also, and present. So the concept is you have a guiding coalition, but you also have these research and study teams that are going to be doing the work. The guiding coalition is a subset, and then the research and study teams under 5.2, that's everyone. So everyone gets to participate in looking at initial ideas, asking as many questions that we have, and the beauty of the whole idea is to be able to ask questions and be able to research and study together and be able to build capacity across the entire community about how we're going to move in each element of the vision. Again, K through 8 configuration is part of it, but all the other elements are part of the study and research team also. So again, looking at 5.1, the guiding coalition is a big part of it, and then that work goes to the research and study teams to explore more, propose new ideas, ask questions. And 5.3 is really about a compression planning process, and we'll use a third party to actually come in and facilitate that process where we're engaging, again, the entire community on how we're going to proceed. So the message really up to now is everyone gets involved. Everyone that wants to be involved can be involved and ask questions and challenge and propose ideas. But we do have a guiding coalition that will present initial ideas. We also have part of this, 5.4 is a guiding coalition, visiting successful K through 8 models. And we have shared in the research that's posted on the website, there are people who are doing this and there are people who are doing this well. And we can reach out to them, we can benchmark from them, and we can even visit them and learn from them. Under Objective 6, we really want to address any concerns that's out there. And we know that there's questions out there, and we want to provide a forum or venues to actually address all the questions. So anticipating potential questions, receiving feedback, and then getting answers. And one of the things I'll share with you is there is research that I've done as a superintendent, that our executive team has done also. So we do have some answers. But again, the beauty of the process in having the study teams and the research teams is that we get to join in together and ask those questions and then research them together and then build capacity across the community as we move forward together. 6.2 really deals internally, really just keeping our ears to the ground and just listening. And that's just not the district leaders, but it's teachers, it's guiding coalition, it's all of us. What are we hearing? What other questions are out there that we need to address or concerns that we need to address? And then you'll see also part of the communication plan is scheduling a back to school community forum in mid-September where we share with them all the work that we have done throughout the summer up to this point, all the questions that we've been able to research and answer and address, and we're building capacity and sharing with the entire community how we're moving from this point. The last part of the communication method just shares with us how we will communicate in printed material, electronic communication, social media, and face-to-face. I think one of the most important things I want to share with you is there's several components of the vision. K through 8 configuration is a element. We'll break out into those groups, but we get to study together, ask questions together, research together, and build capacity together. So I wanted to share with the board that's the communication plan. It is a collaborative process. I'm going to have Pete talk about the portable situation. I do want to just share a caveat. The documents that are uploaded to board docs, those, as I shared, those are ideas. That's a first look. And as I shared, we get to look at these ideas and add to them and contribute to them and ask questions. So I did want to share that information also. Thank you.
I have a question or two on that specific communication plan. What is compression planning?
It's a process used through ESD. Molly Curtis, our communication director, has shared with me. It's an opportunity for our community to get together, anyone who wants to participate, and she's leading them through a detailed process. Now, I've never been through compression planning, but it's a process where everyone in the community gets the opportunity to go through this process of answering questions and looking at the vision and all the elements of the vision and just participating in that process.
Okay, and you've said multiple times that you want to have like a community forum, but there's no dates on here for that.
Absolutely. So this is a draft. This is the first draft that we want to present. So what we're doing right now is we are actually working hard behind the scenes to fully develop this draft communication plan and to actually put information and persons responsible and actually deadline dates. So that is coming. So we expect to have that fully populated by the 16th, the day of our meeting.
Okay.
Yes.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yes.
So I think the guiding coalition coalition's already been established, right? It was 25 members?
Yes,
If it's appropriate, I'd like to get a list of who's on that committee.
absolutely.
Just to assure
Ditto.
that we have good representation from
Absolutely. We'll get that to the board. Thank you.
This document is been a work in progress since spring break. We had an opportunity to tour the district and to visit each portable individually to see what the current use was. David Spencer was also around during that time, and we spent some time just organizing it in this brief table. I know that they have also included some images, so if you're not familiar with our campuses, we could reference those as needed. But we identified the particular areas in the school location, what it's being used for now, and really the thinking behind this is much like Dr. Hurst's comment around the budget. We have a limited budget, we have limited facilities. How can we use them most efficiently as we move towards the innovative vision? And this is just an example of a structure we would put together to say, we hear all these what ifs, all these ideas. Well, what can we actually do? What can we put in place? So it's really offered just as information for the board. I know one of the questions at the last meeting was, do we have enough portables for next school year? And these proposed uses was just based on the idea that we heard from some of the campuses, and it's only one of the ideas shared, so it's one of the best ideas we've heard, which was, could we keep our fifth graders next year, 5th to 6th? Could we keep them in our facilities? And we said, well, let's look into that. Let's see if we can actually physically hang on to all those kids. And so we believe with some of this innovative use of facilities, we could do that. The additions you might note on the graph itself are that when it indicates dry, that means there's not currently a restroom in that portable. I had a meeting this week with Orlin Favreau and Greg Foltz, and they provided some idea. It was actually Jennifer Garza and I talking with them about how those portables could be modified to accommodate those needs. If you scroll down, you'll also see that we had down to MMS. Those are dry as well, and those are also rentals, and that's the one that's currently on the football field. Orland and Greg were also able to describe a process that if we were able to relocate the other portables, their ability and capacity to add sewer and water to those facilities. So they're thinking about those things. They also talked about contracting with a project estimator. It's the type of individual that what Orland said his challenge is finding a contractor saying, hey, would you give me a bid? We get a bid and then we don't do the work. And severing the relationship with those contractors who put a lot of time and energy into doing that. So their thinking was, could we come with a real solid estimate from a professional in the industry, get approval from the board, and then move on to the next step of identifying an appropriate contractor.
Pete, I noticed on those, I was reviewing the rental contract the other day, and there's a specific fee inside of that contract for that we paid it when we placed the facility, and then that's that same fee again when we remove it. Do you know if we decided to move that? I know it's a 3-year rental lease agreement, but if we decided to move it to a different facility, if they will move it for that same price, because it's significantly less than the quotes we got earlier to move some other portables. So I was just curious.
I'm not aware of that agreement, but we can certainly look into that.
Do you know the answer to that, Dr. Boda?
I do not.
Okay, so we'll research that for you.
I would also like to point out one other item here.
It's probably because those are brand new, right? Because they're rentals and they're new. And when we were looking at moving those other ones, they were used, and people were concerned they were going to crumble when we moved them. And so, I mean, they were $70,000, $80,000 to move those other ones that are on the concrete. But anyway, I'd be curious to know just if they honor that same. It's like $20,000 to move it.
I guess what I would like to reiterate for some of the folks who might see their name or their classroom on here, that this really are possibilities, ideas that we'd like to talk about and consider. It's the ideas that are floating around currently in the system.
Pete, to clarify that all of the portables at MMS are dry, though, including the 2 rentals.
Correct, but it's my understanding that these portables have restrooms. They're just currently not being used. These don't have the the physical
I
structure.
got you. They're just not plumbed.
Right, and in speaking with, this was actually Jennifer's idea as we talked about moving the preschool there, and in chatting with Orlin Favreau and Greg Foltz, that you could build sort of a Jack and Jill setup so that they could access from either side. It would decrease the cost a little bit, and you could retrofit those facilities.
Besides your numbers not being correct on MMS for the portable numbers, because you jump a couple of numbers there.
So those are the numbers that are on the door themselves.
Oh, interesting, because that's not the numbers from the office.
So yeah,
I called them,
somebody's
went,
incorrect.
where's
but
36
yes.
and 37? And they said, no, that's not the numbers. Anyways, so if you're discussing the possible potential ideas, have you also been discussing, well, where would we put the resource? The current people that are in these spaces, other than McFarland, because 6th wouldn't be coming there, they could go into the building. Where would we put what's in some of these spaces now?
Sure. So let's just stay here because we're here. Resource room at Wahidas. Then you begin to think about a push-in model for special ed, which is something we've been discussing and considering at MMS since the start.
Can you say exactly what that means?
Right. So at Wahidas, if I'm the resource room teacher, and during small group reading, I pull 5 kids who have been identified for services. They come to me for my reading group. They come from their space. It's called pull-out. We would just send that teacher who no longer has that site, we would push into the classroom. That's what push-in means. So they'd be in the physical classroom space with the rest of the students running a small group.
Okay, so they would be in a normal, regular classroom instead of in a special resource room all day. Is that what you're saying? Those students that are in the resource room now, is that a class?
They're not there all day. Resource room is a rotation of kids that come in for typically it's math and reading services, reading support.
So they just go in the classroom and do it in the classroom?
Right, it's just a rotation of kids.
Okay.
So that's one example of how you might do it. If we go up just a bit, perhaps there's others on the list we could. So similar activity you could run a similar model with ELL. I think the research says that dual is the most effective model for those kinds of students. Not far behind it is push-in ELL support services. It's just not the model that we've had in our system, but those are the kinds of ideas we want to put out there and think about.
I just want to make sure I heard you correct, that this is not the recommended plan, the final plan, or anything like that. This is just one example of some discussions that have happened.
Absolutely.
Correct.
So it's really, when you think about the design thinking process, which we spent some time today thinking about, you brainstorm and you throw out these ideas, and if you have 20 of them, you got to narrow it down to the best 2, but you need more information to do that. So it might feel like a great idea to say, let's not move those 5th graders next year. Let's keep them on our campuses. Hey, that's a great idea. Everyone would love to do that. How do we make it happen? So these are just possibilities and ideas.
And then up at the top of Scootney, the school psychologist has a whole portable themselves now?
Yes.
And then, okay, so I guess I looked at possible Wahida 6th and wondered, does that mean that Scootney would really have 5 sixth grade classes? Or does that mean that those students would be walking back and forth to be a part of Wahidas?
That's a great question. So this one is bolded, and if you scroll down to the bottom, you'll see that we had another bold item there. So we could, if we decided that the best fit for the system was to invest in another new portable, you could place it at Wahidas, or you could move another one, and you would have room for these 6th grade Wahidas students. If you scroll up, just another possibility is you have those kids walk across the street. They're housed at Scootney physically, but they have specials and lunch with the Wahidas students. It's a model that was actually used during some of the construction for Scootney Spring students. We had 2 or 3 Scootney 5th grade classrooms housed at Ludwikaga. They went back for assemblies, they went back for specials. We bussed them for their time that they spent there at Ludwikaga.
Oh my.
Yeah.
Okay, so, and then you have, Wahidas you have at the bottom, you have 6th, I'm sorry, you have 3 sixth grade classes. Is there currently only 5 sixth grade classes there?
There's 3, yeah, so 3 would be moving up. It's still a 3-section school in 5th grade. But that's.
But their current 4th grade has
Right, so here's
4 sessions, meaning that's where that Wahida's 5th would come from.
Yeah, this is the new Wahida's 5th.
Okay.
It's rolling up next
Right.
year regardless of
Okay.
what we do.
So Pete, as we're looking at that, we're really looking at what we can do within our existing facilities on our campuses, right?
Absolutely. The only new on here is this last item.
So if there was other options for housing, potentially like preschool, for instance, then it would open up other options.
Absolutely. Any square footage that we could acquire would open up additional space here. If you go up to this chunk here for preschool and ECAP, and Jennifer's been working hard to consider expansion of that program. This includes that expansion, but if we could even go faster, and we thought that it was fiscally responsible to expand those offerings even more, and we have the facility, anything we can move here certainly would create more flexibility.
The Ludocaga Computer Lab, is that the weird room off of the library? The Ludocaga Computer Lab,
Yes.
is there actually a computer lab now, or is that weird skinny hallway type of room that's off of the library?
Yeah, good question. So the skinny hallway off of the library is it's a makerspace room that librarian who's sort of on the leading edge of some of these design thinking activities and projects and makerspaces. That's her section, but there is a computer lab that is. We could actually go to the image of the Ludocaga campus. I think I could get you there.
I guess while I find this interesting as a board member, I'm not sure we need to devote a lot of time going through every one of these, because this is, my understanding is this just is one iteration of a plan that's going to change tomorrow
Bunch of
anyway.
times.
And so I
Right.
just, in interest of time, I don't see a lot of reason to go through every single classroom and figure out what the initial plan was, because it's going to change from my understanding. From my understanding, this is just an example of the work they're doing, not a finished product. So I just want to throw that out there.
I think it was driven by Jen's question, what do we need for portables next year, was probably why the staff was looking at that. But and I agree, Pete, I'm sure I'll show you where the computer lab is at Ludocaga, but there's another question I have about overall need for portables, though, once that's answered.
So these are the portable areas, the single in the system, and then the computer labs in this area. And you have a similar experience at Wahidas. They have a formal computer lab, and then they had an additional one when the site was built. And so some of the thinking now is, can you push in computer services, because we have Chromebooks in every classroom. So.
Okay.
So
Okay.
what wasn't talked about in this, Pete, was possible need for portables at the high school. Is there no need?
Right, so that's just not a layer of work we've landed on. I know we had a budget planning session today, a staffing session, and one of the takeaways and to-dos from that session was that we begin to communicate with OHS about staffing needs for next year and impact of increased student enrollment. So it's about engaging with Mr. Vergara and his team about, hey, what do you need? The flexibility that comes at a high school, though, is around teacher preps, and could you, share a space or have folks travel from room to room. So there is some capacity there as well.
Well, I'll just remind what Jen brought up is it's the timeline. I remember last year we talked about getting a portable at one point, and there was some timelines that we had gone past, and it became very difficult. And so just a reminder of that too.
Dr. Boda shared a message with us today that it was communication with Orland, I believe, that we are still within that window where we believe we could access portables.
Okay, good.
From the company itself. So the challenge is going to come if we decide to move some, and being able to contract with a company that can use a crane to physically move at least the ones currently at MMS. But we are within the window to order portables for next year.
I have a question going back to the guiding coalition. I know it's halfway done, but I don't know. I guess I'm going to ask the question, and I'm sure Rob can tell me the answer because he's a pretty studious guy. If the board wanted to have a board member on that committee, would that be micromanagement, or would that be feasible for if the majority of the board wanted to put somebody on that committee? What's your feeling?
Are you asking me?
Yeah, as the president, and you can direct it to wherever else you want to go. If you feel like it's inappropriate and micromanaging, then I feel like it just kind of moves.
If it's well, I'm just one though, remember. And if it's a district committee, then it's up to the superintendent to decide who he wants on that. But if 3 board members decide they want a board member on it, then it doesn't matter what the superintendent wants on it. So, yeah, I would say it would get operational, but I'm not really a betting man, but I think I know Dr. Chris Hurst well enough where he's probably about ready to recommend that there be a board member on that committee. Am I right?
So I was going to say that, I mean, we've had these conversations around concentric circle, and I'm not sure if I shared this with the board, but when you look at that concentric circle, part of that communication group and plan is superintendent, board members, and then you get to the other circle, which is staff, teachers, and then you get to students, and you get to the parents, and then you get community members and business partners. So as we shared with the executive team and the directors, we're interested in everyone participating. So all means all, including board members in the process.
Yay, more meetings.
So
Is that
yes,
are you volunteering, Jen?
We're looking for
I
everyone
was
to
going
participate
to
in the
volunteer
process.
you if you didn't volunteer.
Everyone to participate in the
good.
process.
Oh, good. I'm glad you're
bring
considering
it up 'cause I was
volunteering
planning
me.
on doing it.
Right. If my husband's watching, I'm really sorry. That was all his fault.
Tony, did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
So if a board member wants to join that committee, he or she doesn't need board approval necessarily. Then at this point, he or she can let Chris know, or
Yes,
she.
you can.
Okay. Cool.
Okay, this cash flow presentation was initially delivered to President Simmons several weeks ago. He asked that we then pass it on to the board as a whole. So that's why we're doing this this evening. I just wanted to provide a little bit background for those who may not be aware. I doubt that's anyone, but the Othello School District has 3 main areas of revenue: state, federal, and local. And this is largely going to be addressing the state aspect of it. The way that our state apportionment dollars are calculated is based on 2 factors: enrollment, projected enrollment and actual enrollment, and then up until this year it was the staff mix ratio. As of next year, staff mix will go away, so it's no longer relevant, but it is relevant to this presentation. The way that OSPI, the Office of the Superintendent of Public Instruction, works is they ask each district to give a projection. We project that we will have this number of students next year. We project we will have this staff mix ratio, and that is how the district builds its budget. It's unusual, but last year those projections were both higher than actual. So we projected that we would have more students than we actually had this year, and we projected a higher staff mix than we actually had this year. Very, very rare, however, it does occasionally happen. It happened to happen last year. Thalia, if you can scroll up right here. So I'm sorry, Thalia, scroll down. The numbers that are given, scroll down a little bit more, right here. So we projected that we would have 4,436 students here, and we actually had 4,317. So the way that those projections work is OSPI asks us for those projections at the end of one year. They use that projected number for September through December, and then as of January, they start to use actual numbers. Also, we
We projected a staff mix ratio of 1.49, but it turns out that our real staff mix ratio is 1.41. Now, these numbers only matter for state apportionment. When you overproject apportionment and the state corrects that, they pay us per student. So if we overproject and we build a budget higher than we actually had, when it comes time to report our actual numbers, we're going to take in less dollars than we projected. That happened here. We took in, over the course of this school year, we will take in $1,369,411 less dollars than we anticipated. Talia, if you can scroll down just a little bit. Thank you, right there. This shows our state funds. I will point out that there was an error in here. We cut and pasted an incorrect number. So special ed was also actually negative, even though here it shows up positive. When we go on to the next table
So is
down,
that
is
negative
accurate.
almost 500,000? Is that number correct? Even though that, so the 243,000 should be red, but it's in black. Is the
ma'am.
number correct?
Talia, can you scroll down a little bit?
Okay, you fixed it here, is what you're
Yes,
saying.
it is.
Okay.
It is accurate here. So,
All right, perfect.
So the
Thank
number
you.
that shows up here, special education, so it's negative 55.
Thank you.
Okay, so if we scroll down just a little bit more, Thalia, a little bit more. This is the total amount that we came in underneath. Okay, now this is a combination of federal and state. As I mentioned prior, apportionment only impacts state funds. Federal funds are simply told to us, this is how much you're going to get. For example, in Title I and Title III, the federal government comes in the autumn to early winter, and they would say, this is how much we're going to give you this year. But when we build our budget in the summer, we have to anticipate the amount that they're going to give us. Federal dollars are not based on apportionment. I just want to be very clear. However, they also came in Title I and Title III. They also came in less this year. Okay? So this is the total amount that we came in under. Now, last summer, the Board of Directors approved a budget of just over $55 million. That approval that was given is you approved for the district to spend up to and including that amount, not to go over. Those are not real dollars. Those were projected dollars. So when you approved us to spend a budget of up to $55 million, and when we get these numbers from the state and the federal that are reduced, we then reduce those expenditures, and that 55 falls down. The 51 million number here does not include local dollars. With local dollars, it comes out to about 53, I believe. But the whole reason that we showed this is just to show that we ended up bringing in a lower amount of revenue that we anticipated. Talia, if you could scroll down, please. Right here, thank you. So based on the projections at the time this was presented to President Simmons, we projected that we will end up spending approximately $1 million less than we had planned on. The reason for that is that we saw that we're bringing in less money. We actually have less students because we overprojected the students, and so we're going to spend less money. However, the budget capacity, the amount that the board approved for us last summer, does not change. Again, these are not real dollars. These are just the expenditure authority to spend up to that amount. Talia, if you can please go down. And this breaks it out. So the reason that Dr. Hurst and I met with President Simmons earlier is that we wanted to show that these were projections. Now, at the time we met with President Simmons, February and March, those amounts were still estimated. We didn't yet have those dollars. We do have those dollar amounts now, but this is still that presentation. And this shows how much we bring in, how much we spend on a month-to-month basis. The Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction, the OSPI, does not distribute our funds at the same amount each month. In September, they give us 9% of what they owe us for the year. October, 9%. November drops down to 5.5%. And then the two rough months, if you will, are May and June. We only get 5.5% in May. We get 6% in June. In the summer months, it jumps up and we get 10%. Okay? Because of that, we're bringing in less money on these months. According to our projections, we are going to dip into the reserve in the month of June. Okay, so if we look on this blue box down here, according to the estimates, we estimate we're going to spend roughly this amount on electricity, this amount on water, this amount on whatever. In the month of June, we are going to spend more than we're going to bring in, and our reserves, we're going to dip into them. However, the 2 summer months where we get the highest percentage payout from OSPI, that's going to erase that as of the next month, as of July. We're going to jump up to $666,000 in undesignated reserve, and then by the end of the summer, 1.3. So when we initially met with President Simmons, we were just pointing this out. According to our projections, in the month of June, we are going to have a negative number at the very bottom. And we wanted to point that out to the board ahead of time, explain why that was happening, and then show that the very next month and the month following, we're going to jump back up. So I can see that there are questions. I'm happy to address them.
Those are based off projections, right?
Well, we can see right here that this graphic here, actual numbers are for September through January. February on are all projections. They're all estimates. So it's what we expect. It's not exactly what it is.
It's not exactly. Thank you.
Yep.
So I want to let the new board members know too, when he says we have a projection to go in the negative. By board policy, we say that we never want to go below 10% in undesignated reserve. And so we'll go below the 10%, but not below. We won't be negative in the count.
I believe there's even a policy that states that we are supposed to be advised whenever there's a dramatic change in our budget that we need to look at.
I don't have any questions. I have a list of them, but you answered all of them.
Yeah, that's a first. Thank you, ma'am.
I know. Yay.
I have some concerns, but not necessarily about this presentation. By my numbers, the last 3 years, if this pays out correct, we're going to have lost $3.6 million in the last 3 years. My concern is not this year. My concern is the trend. In 2016, according to the last budget document we got, we lost just under $800,000. We spent $800,000 more than we received, according to the numbers that we got in September. In 2017, we expended $1.6 million more than we received. And if I understand this correctly, we're projected to spend $1.157 million more than we're going to receive in income this year. My concern is the trend. I'm just reading the number that's on your chart.
Mm-hmm.
But projection. My concern is not now. It's next year, because I don't see how we're going to continue this trend and not have a major issue next year.
That's one of my main concerns, especially with this K through 8 transition, because it does come at a cost, and those numbers haven't even been presented to us yet.
So my question will be, for follow-up from Dr. Hurst, is what are we doing expense-wise, unless you're showing a projection that all of a sudden this is going to reverse next year, this trend, because now this will be the 3rd year in a row we've expended more money than we put in. And it is a valid point that we're not going to lose as much money this year as we did last year, but it's a concern to me that 3 years in a row we're operating at a loss now. And I get $9 million is a lot of money until you start losing it at a 20% clip every year.
Okay. Did you want to respond to that, or just take a note?
Just taking a note, I heard what Tony said, so we'll actually plan and come back to the board and share with you.
So I just had a question about, maybe a couple of questions, but the staff mix ratio. If this is sent in the end of the school year, August, right? Late August, to OSPI. By then, I'm assuming we've hired 95% of our staff. We might have a couple stragglers, late hires.
So staff mix ratio has a deceptive name. It actually has nothing to do with the actual ratio, staff to students. Staff mix ratio is the education level of our teachers and the years of experience.
Yeah, I'm aware. So I was wondering, how do we not know that in August when we've hired up pretty much all of our teachers for the year? How would we get that wrong?
So I checked in with it. So that is a number that's put in by HR, and I checked in with them today on that exact fact. It's the budget is approved in August. However, that number came up in late spring, and it simply wasn't done last year due to the transition. There was a transition of staff. Those numbers were not collected last year, and that was the explanation that was given to me. So from what I gather, best guess assumption was made onto what it would be. But I am not the one that made that assumption, and the individuals that were involved in that are no longer here. So that's our best guess. But it was confirmed that it simply was skipped over last year. It wasn't done. The good news about that is that it goes away. We're no longer dealing with that. Of course, that's not an excuse, but
well,
moving forward.
My guess would be is anything with that we get extra money for. Obviously, they paid us too much for that. But then because we must have had younger teachers or less experienced teachers, we also didn't pay out as much, right? Isn't that really all just a flow through? The state pays us, we pay the teacher. So the net effect to our account would be essentially zero, right?
Not necessarily. There are some factors in there. I think you could generalize and say that it would be almost zero, but it's not exact.
I would imagine the bigger effect is that they said, okay, so you told us you're going to have 100 more students than you did, and we paid you for that for half a year. Now you have to.
Oh, that is certainly the main driver of this.
Back.
Yes.
But I'm just thinking. I was trying to get an idea of what the local funding was for per student, and I just came up with maybe $6,500. I say state, local. I meant state. Maybe $6,500 per student times 100 students, though. That's $650,000. I mean, it's quite a bit larger. Why is it such a higher number when we compare it to how much the state pays per student?
So it varies depending on grade level. So there's one value for, I believe it's K through 5. There's one value for middle schoolers, and there's one value for high schoolers. There's also different values for running start students, dropout students, and ALE students. They all have different values in there. So it's not taken on, you can't really assign a certain per student amount. And also, remember that these numbers change. They change monthly. So if a student happens to, for example, in this area, if a student's family happens to leave and they withdraw the student and they take them elsewhere, for that month, we don't receive the money for that student, but they may have been a student here for, say, 2 months in the fall. We have to instruct them, but then we lose the payment for them. So it certainly is more involved than just targeting a number.
Another quick question. I know we have a lot of long-term subs in the district right now. How is their pay comparable to a certified? Is it quite a bit less? And then if we eventually fill those long-term subs with certified positions, that's just going to make that bottom line dollar a little less.
I'm going to hand it over to Sandra for that, to address that question.
So long-term subs are on the same salary matrix as certificated teachers.
Okay. Thank you.
But do the long-term subs affect the ratio?
That would be it.
It would, Sandra, correct me if I'm wrong, long-term subs do not need the same level of education and experience as a normal teacher, so that would affect the
So that will drop it because we have higher rates
that would
of
have
long-term
dropped it,
subs?
yes.
Okay.
But again, as of this year, that goes away. It's no longer.
Right.
I should say as of next year, excuse me.
There was definitely significant overestimations because when you look at our trend, I think we were up 46 million a year for a couple of years for expected revenue, and then it jumped up to 55. It was like a $9 million jump in revenue expectation. My last question that I have is really more for Dr. Hurst. I don't know, looking at the enrollment, because I was trying to figure out where did we drop so much from one grade level to the next from last year. And I don't know if you're aware, but it was, I think, 80 students in 2 grade levels in high school dropped from last year to this year. Wow. It's a big number, and I know that's something we've been keeping track of with graduation rate. And I think it was it seemed like sophomore to junior was somewhere around 50 students.
We
Maybe
lost that
35.
many in 1 year. Is that because of dropout or?
I don't know the answer. When I was looking at the enrollment from last year, and then they move up
That
a grade level,
cohort.
and looking at the enrollment this year, it was significant at 2 grade levels, so.
So I can look into that and see and
Yeah,
verify.
it would be nice to have some numbers too that look to the future. What happened if our numbers did go down
Got it.
in enrollment? Because that is going to greatly affect the budget too.
Great presentation, thank you.
Thank you.
I just have a couple. I hope we weren't off the K through 8. It was part of the presentation. Of course, I pretty much stated how I felt earlier on the K through 8. I do have a lot of questions. I've been doing a lot of reading, a lot of researching on it, especially the last couple of weeks. I've spent a lot of 1 o'clock mornings reading about K through 8. I understand where a K through 8 school can help improve the education level. It can raise it. But I've also read that's in old school standings, and we are building a K through 8. And that's a lot of my concern too, is building a K through 8. I don't know if anybody here in this room has went through that process of building a K through 8 school. We are taking schools that were built for K through 4 originally and trying to convert through this. I see a 2-year timeline, very aggressive. And what I'm concerned about is that it's so aggressive that it may affect our students. I don't want to find out that we've made a mistake in one little area of it a couple years down the road that's going to affect our students, and we have to change the process going down the road. I read that schools that take this transition take up to 5 years for this transition because it takes a lot of work, a lot of study to do this, especially with somebody that's never did it before. This is all new for, I think, all of us. And I'm willing to step up, learn a lot more about it. I encourage all those people that have questions and concerns to get very active in this, because that's the only way they're going to learn a little bit more about this too. So, and I want them to be a part of this process, because I think we got a lot of work in front of us to see how this is going to work and ultimately affect our kids. And that's my concern, is the kids too. I want to see, I like the vision of the higher. We need to help with the education level. We need to get those numbers up, but I don't want it to also affect and drive them down with mistakes along the way.
So just a quick response. I certainly agree the process is going to be very important, and including everyone in the process is going to be very important also. I think I shared also that's the beauty of how we have designed the process. Everybody gets to come to the table. Yes, I agree there's a lot of questions. I would also share and just put it out there that I have successfully implemented a K through 8 from an existing K through 5. It's been very successful also. But we have K through 8 systems here in Washington, and we have some in the research that we shared also that are doing very well. And again, if you look at the process that we're using, we all get to sit down together, look at those who are implementing very well and successfully. And I agree, there's the old K through 8 model, and the research does talk about that being successful. And then some new K through 8s also that have not been successful. The research also talks about well-implemented K through 8s. And I have shared, and I'll be the first to say again, that K through 8 reconfiguration will not solve all of our issues in of itself, which is why I've always stated that it's a combined vision. So we're incorporating all of those elements to include the K through 8. So there's some benefits that are provided through the K through 8. One of the things I've shared specifically is the shared knowledge that exists, collaboration and consistency for the students, parent engagement. But then if you look at the other pieces of the vision, we're talking about a more engaging instruction, which leads to increased attendance, grad rate, and decreased discipline. So I'm looking at the big picture of everything together, but the point is certainly well taken. It is a collaborative process. We get to answer all the many challenging questions together. And I do realize that there are a lot of questions out there, but we'll do this together.
Okay.
I do have one more clarification, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Sometimes these budgets are, when we have a document that says that everything should be in a simple format, but, and this isn't, I don't think Brian's budget, but the budget I was looking at from the actual, the one we got in August, it actually, it's weird the way they put it together, but it showed it shows actual numbers, and it shows us that we lost 1.6 million in actual numbers, and then down at the bottom in a teeny tiny footnote, it says we actually had a bunch more revenue than we expected. And so I want to stand corrected that we actually, last year, our fund balance went up by 460,000, not down by 1.6. And that's a funky way to show it. So hopefully you don't show it that way next year as a footnote at the bottom. But I don't think you did it. I think it was somebody else. But anyway, I just wanted to stand corrected that when I was looking through fund balances, I was trying to figure out how you can begin with 10 million and end with 10,500,000 and lose 1,600,000. I'm terrible at math sometimes, but that didn't quite add up. So I was trying to figure out why that was.
You might
So I
not want
finally
to say
figured it
that
out
too
in
loud
the
with your
very
job.
bottom footnote. So I want to stand corrected. We've still lost money the last 3 years, but not quite as much as I was portraying. For Chris as well.
I'm going to recommend a recess for 5 minutes before we move on to item D1, if the rest of the board agrees.
I agree.
Okay, so it's 8:33 right now. We'll reconvene. 8:34, we'll reconvene at 8:39 for executive limitations and end policies. And there are two reports. Ends 1 report was part of our calendar. Ends 3, if you remember, the board had asked for additional information in that presentation, so that is an update. So, Dr. Hurst, it's you again.
Yes, we're going to turn it over to Dr. Perez. He's going to introduce his team.
I have recently received my doctorate in portables. I would like to invite some members of the teaching and learning team up to participate in this End 1 report. I'll start it from here and then allow them to sort of take the mic up front and roll through the rest of the presentation. So, Thalia, if we could go to that document. As we move to the second slide, it's just a consistent reminder for us and another opportunity to communicate with the board and the community related to the elements of the vision. And certainly that we're making every effort to tie in the ends that the board has developed with our work and where the system is moving. We also like to take this opportunity to put the instructional vision in front of folks again and celebrate the good work. If we could go to the next one. Celebrate the good work of the students and staff, the teachers that are out there working hard day to day to give our students the opportunities they deserve. Slide 4 provides it's a snapshot of the director entry plan that we developed through the central office transformation process. And so I just want to bring your attention to the strategic operational outcomes that are listed related to STEM activities, ELA and social studies, and then the early learning component at the bottom. We're going to speak specifically about year one in each of these particular categories. That will be more of a narrative component of this presentation, followed by a data portion.
So for the operational outcome of students demonstrating integrated critical thinking and problem solving in STEM, year one really focused on creating those projects and introducing them to both staff and students. And so two of the things that we've been working on are STEM leadership and professional development, and then the actual STEM work at the buildings on the student level. And with the leadership, it's important, you can't just create these things and give them to teachers and expect them to run with it. There needs to be time to develop, get teachers comfortable with the idea that they can see themselves as STEM teachers, that they trust that their students can do the work as well. So we have a district level STEM committee, we have a regional level committee that goes down to the ESD, and at these meetings, resources are shared on defining what STEM is, giving project ideas, and then also developing the STEM action plans that are at each building now this year. The work there, the picture that you can see, that's a second grade class at Hiawatha doing a STEM or an engineering design challenge. So we have design challenges going on. We're using resources like Picture Perfect STEM and mystery science lessons at K-5. 6-8, they're also doing integrated and STEM projects. And at the 9-12 level, there's been more work just kind of investigating what other high schools are doing so that teachers are more comfortable combining their content with this idea of projects. So research into project-based learning, and we went to Delta High School in February with a group. We went down to High Tech High last month with a group, and there's going to be some more site visits coming up. So that's where we are with STEM.
So I'll be talking quickly about strategic outcome 2, students demonstrate integrated critical thinking and problem solving around ELA and social studies. And I'll follow the format Jessica used. These are just some of the things that we're currently doing in the system to bring this about. So we have currently a K-5 ELA adoption committee that's working. We've continued to administer and refine benchmark assessments K-12 to track student growth in ELA, and those benchmarks specifically as part of the components, they measure students' ability to critically think, to critically write, to critically read. We also began work on 6-12 ELA frameworks focusing on skill development around writing and critical thinking and reading. And I also worked with Jessica Schenk on STEM projects and how they can tie in with ELA, especially at the elementary level. They're pinched for time as it is, so the more we can integrate and bring content areas together, the more time they have to actually implement the changes.
So my goal is around having preschool for all the children in our community. And so one of our goals this year was to increase enrollment. It was to double enrollment. We didn't quite do that, but we did increase. So our OSD preschool increased from 80 students to 120. And then also, I work pretty closely with ECAP out of the ESD, and they increased their enrollment from 40 to 77 this year. So we had a large number increase there. Some of our biggest success is we do give a screener because we have a certain amount of slots. We can't take every kid currently. So we did give a screener. And at the beginning of the year, only 8% of those students scored at least 30 points. And so the reason we say 30 points is because when they get ready to go into kindergarten, if they at least score 30 points, we say yay. I mean, the test is worth almost 100 points, and so of course we want them to get closer to that, but 30 is kind of like our bare minimum. If they at least can get 30 points, we're pretty excited about that. So at the beginning in August, when we gave that assessment, we only had 8% of students that scored at least 30 points. We recently gave that same exact assessment. We gave it again in November, and then we gave it again in February. And in February, 97% of our kids scored at least 30 points. So I think we're doing a great job of the early literacy goal of getting them ready for kindergarten. And we have several kids that scored at least 50 points, 70 points, and then we had a couple score the max amount of points. Again, on that same assessment, the average was 19 points back in August. So if you took all 120 kids and you averaged their score, the average score was 19 points. And when we did it again in February, our average score was 65 points. We're actually getting ready to give that same assessment next week. So hopefully we'll see even more growth, or at least our points go up higher. And then we'll probably get it again in June before preschool session ends for the summer. Along with that goal, I did mention some of our parent involvement programs. So we started Learn Academy this year, and we had 50 families complete that either in our first cohort that was started in September, or we had our second cohort that started the end of January. So between the two groups, we had 50 families that completed the entire process. We had more families sign up, but a few of them dropped out through the process. We've had Ready for Kinder in our district now for 10 plus years, and this year, between our fall, winter, and spring sessions, we had 369 families attend. Some of those families are the same. I don't want to misrepresent that number. Some of them might have attended in the fall, winter, and spring, or some of them might have attended winter, spring. So that's a combination of all three together. And then we have partnered with the Dolly Parton Foundation so that parents can sign up so their children receive a free book every month. And if they have to be under 5 years old, so birth to 5. And if I have a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old, I get a book for each one of those students because most of them are kind of geared towards what age they are. So we currently have 490 children in our community signed up to receive those free books every single month. So that's a little bit about what's going on with early childhood education.
Those slides were an opportunity to share highlights as we work to develop that entire pipeline of services. Just a quick reminder here that we're going to be talking now about measures and targets as we share some data. I also want to point out that the data that you're going to see, what you won't see here are the layers and the data sheets available at every school site that allows the system to synthesize and present to you in a more broad way. Certainly, the expectation at the building level is that kid by kid, we understand where each of our students are so that we can measure their progress and measure their growth. This is going to be a big picture view of that work. So now back to the sort of nitty-gritty of academic competencies. We are going to talk about some of the highlights and then the next level of work or challenges around End 1. Certainly talking about continuous growth and closing the opportunity and achievement gaps, which we see as the heart of this issue and is I think when you think about your work as a principal in a district and a community like ours, that's really what we're working towards. And then also the transfer of knowledge and skills across disciplines as we work towards the innovative vision.
Go to the next one too. All right, so like Pete was saying, there's two different ways to look at End 1. One is the proficiency, and then the other is the growth. And so we'll start with looking at the proficiency levels. In the first area is letter knowledge, phonemic awareness, decoding, fluency, and comprehension, and those are the 5 layers of reading instruction. Here's the measures that we have in place, and so you can go ahead and go to the next slide. First one up is pre-decoding for our kindergartners. How we read these graphs is the last 2 columns here will be our district in September and then again in March. So you can see as a whole where we were to begin and where we ended, and then each of the buildings has 2 columns there as well. One thing to note about this particular set of numbers is that at the beginning of the year, these are end of year standards, and that's the way our teachers actually prefer to look at it that way. They want to know where the kids are actually starting and where they're going to end up. And so you'll see a lot of our kids came in, obviously not at end of year kinder standards, and we've increased that number by about 29% in the time period. There's been some significant growth in pockets. So that's one of the things we want to celebrate, but then also making sure that we're not satisfied with that and learning from each other. And also, as Jennifer was saying, the preschool is going to affect this greatly as we're getting more and more kids ready to come into kindergarten. So go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt. I
Yeah.
just want to let the board know there's some formatting issues when you try to look at some of these from the Chromebook. But Talia just sent this to your email, sent the presentation, so that should look like the one that's on the screen.
Okay.
Next up is the decoding for our first through fifth graders, and this is actually a snapshot of the system as a whole and each building as a whole. So we're looking at all of the first through fifth graders, their pre-decoding skills, and that's actually being able to decode the words on the page. And again, you'll be able to see the district in September and again in March. The growth that we've seen, those are progressing benchmarks, meaning that like a 48 in the fall would be benchmark, and then maybe 49 in the spring. So they actually have to keep moving up, and they do take into account fluency, which also those benchmarks do move up. Again, we're seeing pockets of significant growth. So making sure that we're again learning from each other, really understanding the standards themselves through the Teacher Clarity Initiative, and really diving into that measure itself. What is the test telling us? What can we learn from it? Go ahead. This set of numbers shows us our reading comprehension scores. These are assessments given to third through fifth graders. And again, it's a snapshot of the system. So you're looking at how many kids, or what the average score of the kids third through fifth grade was in each of the buildings. This is one of the things to celebrate about this is that this is the first time we've actually had a system in place to gather this kind of information, this kind of assessment. The assessment itself mirrors the Smarter Balanced. It's written exactly to look like it, and so we can get a pretty clear picture of where our kids are at that time. It is the standards that are assessed at the beginning continue to be assessed, but new standards are picked up along the way. So the assessment at the beginning assesses 3 targets, and at the end, I think we're up to all 7 of them now, or 14 actually.
Back on.
Go back.
Go ahead.
I was just going to ask if you could explain the drop right off the bat.
It's a good question. Like I said, the first assessment only assessed 2 targets, so it was not as broad of an assessment. And then after that, we started to pick up a lot more. A couple of things we need to look at is making sure that we understand this assessment, the teachers know what that information is giving us. And then also, it kind of piggybacks off of a lot of the work that David Spencer has done this year we are looking at adopting an ELA program to kind of address these numbers, because this is the percentage of kids that are proficient there, and that's still pretty low.
I think one other factor along those lines, and Justin will correct me if I'm wrong on this, but it's the level of scaffolding that perhaps is provided initially, that when teachers give that assessment, and it's really meant to give us a snapshot, but also to drive instruction. So part of that reality there is there could have been a different level of support as you free students up as we move towards that state assessment window where there's much less scaffolding.
Yeah, just a comment. So I'm colorblind. I'm not severely colorblind, but when you have such thin lines, certain ones are tough for me to distinguish. So I can look at the lines, but then when I try to say, well, which school is that?
We can make it bigger next
time.
time.
A little bit of a guess.
Gotcha.
Yeah, or a different style graph. Just a thought for.
Gotcha.
So this actually shows, tell me again what this specific chart shows?
This is an assessment that is created to mirror the Smarter Balanced, so it's only given to grades 3, 4, and 5. It's a passage in a 7 questions. And so it's assessing the reading comprehension ability of our students through the lens of the Smarter Balance itself. So it's really truly a mirror of what that assessment's going to look like. And so what this tells us is, for example, like Ludwikaga, on this date when they took it, their kids averaged about 37% on the assessment. So each kid averaged about a 37%.
Okay.
Next up, we're going to look at some math numbers. So we're looking at the fact fluency, skill development, and problem solving. Here are 3 measures that we have in place that we're collecting throughout the system. First up is kinder math proficiency. Again, these are end of year standards. So at the beginning of the year, we had 5% of our kids come in and actually were meeting the end of year kinder standards, which is pretty good actually. And then we've seen as a district, we've jumped up to 53% with 10 weeks to go in our instruction. So the number of red has drastically been reduced, and our number of kids at standard has gone significantly up.
Before you go to the next slide, can you explain NEAR? Exactly what is NEAR?
NEAR. So what we're doing is we're looking at, this is like our top, off the top of my head, I think it's I don't remember the number exactly this assessment is out of, but it's like 70% to 100 on that assessment. So they're at standard. This is about 45 to 69%, their average, and this is 0 to there. So it's looking at the percent they got right on the assessment, how many kids are at that benchmark, the near are getting close to it, and then your reds are the ones that are.
So near is like 30% gap, potentially.
Potentially.
Up to 30% gap.
Up to 30% gap, yeah. So they could be 1% off mean standard, or they could be 29% off mean standard. They're still considered to be in that yellow to show us that they're getting close, but that's why this red number, you really want to look at that as well, because those kids aren't even in that bubble.
Okay.
So, yep. One more thing I wanted to add about this. Our next layer is, this isn't actually an in-house assessment. It assesses the major cluster standards of math for kindergarten. And so making sure that our next layer of work is making sure that that assessment is truly a good measure of where our kids are, and that we understand how to use the data to continue to drive instruction. Again, our lines here. This goes to the math concepts and procedures. This assessment is given actually every 2 weeks. Again, it mirrors the Smarter Balanced. It's written strictly from the item specs themselves. All kids take it grades 3 through 8. So you'll see here that there isn't actually an MMS line here. Again, it's averaging all the kids in that building, how they did. And so you'll see the lines here where we're running all over the board. This is each week is assessing different standards that have been taught. So nothing on here is assessed in theory if everybody's at the same pace. All those standards have been taught. Nothing is new to the kids. And so we're seeing how they're progressing on standards that have already been taught. In this, it's the same assessment. I just wanted to give you a big picture look. So each week, each time we've taken it, we can see how many kids we've had at standard, well above standard, at standard, near, and well below across the whole system, grades 3 through 8, where we're at every 2 weeks.
Can you tell me those again? Because we have the dots up there on the corners are key, but
Yep.
There's no words.
This is well above. So all these kids would be considered to be passing that assessment.
Okay.
These are your near, like we just spoke about, and these are your well below.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, so is this being tested on different standards each time, different things? Because it looks like it's kind of a flat line to me, a little bit.
Let's say like you learn standard NF1 in week 1, it's going to be assessed over time. It's never going to go away, but it's not necessarily going to be on every test. There's only 4 questions on each, so we don't take up a ton of time. But yes, the standards, the same ones are going to be assessed. You just pick up new ones along the way as they're taught. So yeah, you're right though. The trend line which is added here has kind of flatlined to a little bit because we were picking up standards, so we're not completely mastering all those new standards as we're picking them up. Is what that's telling us.
Okay. So we're not here to interpret this right now. We're just sharing the data, right?
You're asking us if we're interpreting it,
Well,
or?
I'm just wondering if, yeah, I've seen some real growth in the other ones from like fall to winter. And this one, I mean, when I look September 29th, the first one, and then March 23rd, the last one, and it was 40%, and now it's 37%. For the lowest line, I just wonder what does that mean to you as educators?
The big thing with this data is we're still really learning how to use it, how to dive into it. And the thing to keep in mind with it, the assessment gives us information, but it doesn't give us like a broad picture like the Smarter Balance itself would, because that's 40 some odd questions. You're going to get a real clear picture of where the kids are because of the volume of questions. This is only 4 questions per grade level, right? And so it's giving the teacher a snapshot of these standards I've already taught, how are they doing? So there are limitations to this data that we can only assess for standards. So like this one right here, the kids did well, but was it because of the assessment type, the question type, the standards themselves? It's not a one-to-one correlation that the exact same standards were assessed here is assessed here. I'm not sure if I'm saying that correctly enough. Or
is it assessed at a different level?
It's the same level. It's the same level, but it could be it could be different standards that they're assessed on. But all of the standards that they've seen have been taught. So up to this point, we've basically taught all the standards. And there's, gosh, probably 20 some odd standards for each grade level, and I can only pick 4 each time to assess them on. But it's giving the teachers a snapshot of where the kids are on those 4 standards. And every day they're seeing a review of these, but we're not collecting the data. This is just giving us a way to collect it and say, where are we as a system?
So I have a question.
Yeah.
Is there a way to show, when you show growth, I mean, it's fine that we can show there's growth as a whole.
Yep.
But we can't tell how many kids actually grew within this number.
Yes.
And I just wish there was a way to show, I like the scatter plot way to do it, but a way to show a percentage of kids that grew from not even a whole level, but how many, 86% of kids achieved better results, 5% went down.
Yeah.
Is there a way to show numbers like that instead of?
We definitely
this
can.
format?
With the amount of data being collected at the buildings, there's lots of different things we can do. Like Pete was saying, this is just kind of one of the ways to look at it from a real broad perspective. But yeah, we can dig into each kid and each.
The problem with the data from my view is I'm more concerned if a kid was at or near and now is below than I am globally where they're at.
Gotcha. So
if that makes any sense.
So what percent of kids are actually moving a proficiency level, per se?
Are making progress making positive progress. Because in a global number like this, I can't tell. There could be 15% that went down, and there's no way to tell from this.
Gotcha.
So just a quick comment on that. One is certainly the more intense data sheets that live at the building. We could generate those numbers. I think the caution that we run into is this is about closing the gap. So really demonstrating here's the bar and certainly celebrating the growth, but how fast are we moving? With what kind of urgency are we making that progress? And so we can certainly.
Where in our policy does it say anything about closing the gap?
Let's go back to.
I realize that's what the state wants.
Yeah.
I don't think that's in our policy.
Not this one.
Right, but if we go back to, Thalia, go back several slides to the academic competencies piece here. I think this is worth our discussion. Keep going.
I take that back. There is some language in there.
Yeah, and we'll go back. It's as we think about this movement and the changing of the structure in the system, and teachers are out there. When you a few weeks ago, a school board member, I believe it was from Seattle Public Schools or one of the Western Washington schools, put out this data comparison about the new funding model and said, here are the schools getting the most money, here's where the highest need is. And so what I know you're aware of and our teachers are aware of, it's very intense work, the kind of work that they're doing. And so that whole idea about closing the gap, I think that's where these funding models come from. That's where this innovative vision comes from, that's really the heart of our work. And so when we present it in this way, it's with that idea in mind. How many kids are getting over the bar? Not and I've heard you say it several times, are we doing better than Warden? Are we doing better than Royal? Well, that's not how we're thinking. Are we doing better than everybody? How many kids are we moving? And so that's how it's presented. But if there's additional information that would help communicate that, we certainly want that feedback, but we also want to let you know where we're working from.
Yeah. I'm not saying this isn't valid good information or anything like that. I'm just saying that for me as just one board member, I'm really interested in growth. But that's just me I was referring more to the top part of that end more than the closing the achievement gap part, but the continuous growth.
Yeah, I don't even think, not just as one board member, that is a board, something the board been focused on for several years now, and you know that. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Dr. Hirsch shared a video with me Monday on summer slide, and I think it really it challenges that idea about if you watch growth from year to year, but you don't pay attention from across the years, how maybe we're celebrating. So a kid on this chart made 6 months progress this school year. And last year they made 6 months progress, but they were already behind, and then they fell behind 3 months in the summertime, right? So I think we have to be cautious about saying, yeah, kids are growing, because what I'm hearing from the superintendent is, we're not going fast enough. Are we moving with enough urgency? So I guess my comments aren't meant as a challenge to that concept. I just want to provide some rationale for how we're thinking about the numbers.
Yep.
Okay.
So we're going to look at, are we on F-list then? Okay. We're going to look at F-list for grades 9 through 12 and the number of students who earn all credits working around this N1 competency. So if you can bump this is their benchmarks, right? Okay, so before we get to the F-list, these are actually our benchmarks. This is the first time we have collected benchmark data around ELA 612 as a system. I mean, we've done it in pockets, but not as system-wide. So you will see here is like, we have MMS, Desert Oasis, and OHS, or the district as a whole. I guess the red, sorry, excuse me, is OHS and DOHS. Here on benchmark 3, we have information from MMS. We're missing the OHS, and I wanted to talk about why we're missing that. We use the state assessment tool. It's called an ICA, an interim comprehensive assessment, and they have a glitch on their end, so they're really slow in getting the numbers back to us. So we have about, of the 300 kids that took the benchmark, we have 50 of those scores in by the time we had to put this report together. So as they trickle in, we may be able to get those to you. The state's aware of the glitch. We're just not able to pull the data at this time. So that's why, if you're looking at this, why you're seeing some missing numbers here. But you can see from benchmark 2 to benchmark 3, we still have the same number of students performing, 43% for MMS, but this test was significantly harder than the previous benchmark because we added levels of complexity and rigor into the test and in the construction of it. So I just wanted to point that out. You can go ahead to the next one. So here's our 912 F lists. I know that it had been asked at a previous board meeting what we're doing to track students besides seniors on their F list, and this is how the high school is tracking that data. So you can see they have week time frames here so that they can find out for 9th grade how many kids exactly are failing at least one class, who has multiple Fs. Those types of things, numbers of percentage of Fs by departments. And the school is sharing this information with the teachers so that they're getting feedback to know, here's the kids that we're having trouble with. This department's a little high on Fs. Let's look at why that is. Things like that. And you can see, if we go to the next one, we'll kind of zero in on the freshmen, I believe, right? Yeah. Did we skip one? Maybe two, sorry. There it is. So you can see the trend for freshmen. And we focused in on freshmen because for the new ESSA information that we have to gather, this is going to be an important piece of that. The state tracks how many freshmen fail a class, and it will have an impact on school improvement for the high school. So we wanted to focus in on this, and you can see that, I mean, these numbers fluctuate a little bit as they're going through, but the high school is aware of this and is making it known to their teachers and working with the students to motivate them to pick their grades up a little bit. Freshman year is particularly tough. It's a transition year for the kids, and the rigor really picks up at the high school compared to what they had at the middle school. So I think that's one of the reasons in Dr. Hurst's long-term vision that he addressed this freshman transition, and I'm sure more information will be coming out about that as time goes on.
I have a question about those numbers. Are those acceptable? Like, are we considering those acceptable numbers?
We're considering those current reality.
Yeah.
This is where we are in the system.
Have you haven't looked at these numbers in the past this way?
I think what I've heard a couple times here, I heard Mr. Johnson and then Mr. Spencer mention it as well. There hasn't been the capacity in the system to generate this kind of information, so it might not fit into the N1 compliance components, but certainly building this infrastructure to allow that to happen is something that we're celebrating because we know it's important for our teachers to have it in their hands and our building leaders. So this is not, we haven't talked about it in this level of detail in my time in the system.
Okay. And the consistency, I mean, for 3 of them, you basically have 50%, 50%, 50%, half. And then it increases. Why? Have you talked about the theory behind why?
I'm sorry, what? Yeah, these are passing. So
right.
So 66% of kids are passing all of their classes. So that means the F list went down.
Right.
So we're at 34% of kids as opposed to 51% of kids failing a class here.
Right. So, but what I'm saying is,
why is it fluctuating?
why do you think that at that date the number goes up, that there more are passing? Have you talked about as to why? What?
Maybe they took a test and they brought it up.
Well,
I'm sure the tests are what bringing.
This is also,
Yes,
we're approaching
right.
end of a quarter here.
I would, speaking from some personal experience, I can tell you that kids turn in a whole bunch of homework the week before grades are.
Right. And this, we're approaching the end of a quarter, so there's a sense of urgency in most of the students, and they realize, oh, I got to do this. And that's particularly true for our freshmen.
For those teachers that do allow that, right?
For those, yes, for those teachers that do allow that.
Is there some that don't?
If you read syllabuses, there's lots that don't.
Oh, I'm talking about
Yep.
reality, not the syllabus. Don't mention any names, please. That was a joke.
Any more questions on that?
Just if you, yes, that you were already thinking that of the reality as to the why, right?
And I think another point to make, apart from the urgency and the pressure of the end of a grading period, we also cannot discount the efforts of that high school to monitor the data, to put it in front of teachers, this is site-developed data. And so walking into a staff meeting and say, hey, by department, this is where we're at. Will you all talk for 5 minutes and let us know why you think this is happening? And so I think we have to give recognition for that kind of effort that's happening at the site as well. It's just not because it's the end of the semester. That certainly helps. Hey, I don't have to have a conference if I'm passing everything. My parents and I both love that idea. But anyway, I want to make sure we give credit to the folks who are out there doing it day to day.
So now kind of getting to that idea, like I was saying before, in the end, there's the achievement level, and then there's also the growth and improvement. So this will hopefully answer or kind of hit on some of the questions that Director Ashton had. So go ahead to the next slide. This is one that we've already looked at, but looking at it from a different lens. So the decoding levels, the proficiency levels of our kids, grades 1 through 5, but then actually looking at the growth that is taking place. And again, these are progressing benchmarks, so they're getting harder. But you'll see in a couple areas that there's been about a 12% increase in the kids we have meeting that standard. So while it doesn't show how many actual the number of kids that is, or what the number of kids that have actually moved up a level, it's showing that there is quite a bit of growth actually happening there. It's just looking at it a slightly different way.
I'm sorry, you said 12%. Where are you getting 12?
A couple of the sites have seen 12% growth.
Oh, okay.
Lutakaga has seen about 12%, and Wahidas has seen about 12%. And then as a whole, as a system, they're at about 8%, 7.5%. Same thing here with the weekly assessment passages. On to the next. So now looking at just from a different lens, the growth, we don't see as much growth here. And again, like Pete was saying, this is a brand new measure, and so we're still learning how to use the measure itself as collected like this, and making sure that we all understand what information it's giving us to go from there. But along with this, and it's been said a couple times here, that each building is collecting this student by student, so they're able to actually track. If you look at their sheets, you're actually able to track student A, how they've done at each one of those, and then monitoring the growth for each student. STAR reading is a predictor of SBA proficiency, but it's not a one-to-one correlation. Our kids take this grades 6 through 5, and so this is, again, just a glimpse of the entire system, each building, how many kids are at standard. And these are nationally normed standards, and so we can find out how many are actually meeting that cut line and what kind of growth we're seeing, how many more we're getting over the bar. So as a whole, as a district, we've increased a little bit. Again, the work is around coming together and coming up with common materials that we're going to be soon adopting and making sure that they are hitting the standards that we need and really unpacking those standards through teacher clarity work to understand how are we going to move more students. Same thing in math. Our ultimate goal here is increase student growth by 3 to 5% on the Smarter Balanced. With the 16, 17, 8th grade cohort, unfortunately, we haven't taken the assessment yet, so we don't know if we've met that target. But we do have a few indicators here. Again, on STAR, which is a pretty solid indicator. This is our first year taking the STAR 360 math assessment. So this is kind of our baseline numbers, but looking at it through the growth lens, we do have buildings that have seen growth from fall to winter, and keeping in mind that they are progressing benchmarks. If a student scores 450 in the fall, they could be at standard. If they stay at 450 in the winter, they're probably not going to be at standard because the benchmark did go up. Same thing for ELA and math in grade 11. This is our STAR 360 data for 6th grade, or 6 through 12, broken out by building for reading. You'll see it's kind of flatlined. We haven't picked up very many more students at standard. So some of the work here that's taking place is creation of ELA frameworks, making sure the pacing and the standards progression is really well lined out, which is in its early phases with David Spencer and those teams up there. Also, the teacher clarity initiative itself, really making sure we understand those standards so these numbers will start to rise. STAR 360 math, we're seeing a little bit more growth in those areas. Again, nationally normed benchmarks. The thing I wanted to point out with these is the thing that jumped off the page to me when I looked at these is these don't necessarily match our ESPA predictions for math. And so we need to make sure, again, this is just our first year taking it, are the benchmarks truly giving us an accurate number of what we can predict? Because if they aren't, then we need to figure out what the difference is. But we are seeing growth as far as how many more students are meeting standard on those benchmarks across each of the systems. Any questions?
What is mystery science? I skipped. Just should have jumped in.
It's a supplementary curriculum option for grades K-5. So our current kits that we have K-5 are not aligned to NGSS, the science standards. And so mystery science is a way for teachers to fill those gaps with teachers just rave about it. It's an online platform that gives them both videos that they can show students plus hands-on activities.
So it's not a whole brand new curriculum, it's just additional to get us to the right place?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So none of this was year to year. It showed progress from over time.
Yes.
But all the parts that said year to year, there was no year to year. Are you just giving this as a baseline?
So that's one of the considerations we wanted to bring before the board in the conversation is part of the challenge is we haven't delivered some of those state assessments or the measures or targets that have been identified. So the challenge of reporting at this time of year is to say, here's how we believe we're going to do. We're making some predictions, much like the budget idea. We're predicting, but actual performance, we could deliver more effectively in July or August. So for us to put up smarter balanced performance or big picture assessments, we can't do it right now because we haven't captured that data. And some of these are brand new. We didn't have the STAR assessment last year. There wouldn't be anything to lay next to it to show the year-to-year progress.
I understand. I understand that. However, my opinion then would be this ends has not been met for that portion of the evaluation.
You do have to remember, the monitor and response document for an ENDS is different than an EL. So I'd encourage you to go read. One of the things I was going to bring up, but I was going to wait till the end, but I'll bring it up now since you brought it up, is that when the SurveyMonkey goes out, we need to make sure, we talked about this last time we did an ENDS, but we need to make sure that the metrics of deciding an ENDS is not in compliance with an exception, and not in compliance. There's a complete different set of data. One of them's, off the top of my head, one of them's you've achieved it, one of them's you've made, there's 4 of them. You've made progress towards achieving it, and then the bottom one is we don't think you've made any progress. And we need to make sure that to make our Survey Monkey valid, we need to change the questions, the way we answer them, so that they actually match our monitoring response document. I'm sure Ms. Rob will pull it up and get the exact wording for me, but.
I got it. So the first one says, based upon the information provided, the board finds the superintendent has reasonably interpreted the provisions of the ends, and the district is making reasonable progress toward achieving the desired results. Number 2 says, based on the information provided, the board finds that the district is making progress toward achieving the desired results called for in the relevant ends policy, but a greater degree of progress is expected in the following specific areas. Number 3 says, based upon the information provided, the board finds the superintendent has failed to provide evidence of reasonable organizational progress toward achieving the desired results called for in the ends policy. And action to be taken. And number 4, the information provided by the superintendent is insufficient for the board to decide whether reasonable progress has been made. So I agree with Tony.
It's just a little bit different. These are really complex ends.
Okay, I understand that, but then I would say for the year-to-year perspective of this, number 4, what was number 4 again?
That was, there's insufficient information.
Insufficient
And
information
you'll have
for that portion.
you'll be able to give your opinion on that when you get the survey, or you can give it now too, but.
Right.
But I agree
You
with
know
that.
I will.
I'm glad
I'll
Tony
give my
brought that
opinion
up, because
anytime.
the Survey Monkey has to be modified for these, and I'll work with Elliot so that it matches our actual monitoring document better.
Okay. Other than the part of definitely changing the time for next year?
That's a board decision, so. that'll come up in
The
policy
input
review.
given, I guess, is what I should say. Yeah. Okay.
I have a general question about why do we combine, or why have you decided to combine DOHS and OHS in the same?
Yeah, so in many of the slides you saw the combination. We were certainly working from a big picture perspective. Again, the level of detail and site by site and kid by kid, that's what created these documents. So it was just a matter of how to present it to the board. If you would like it in another format, we certainly would take the feedback in your report, in your response.
It's interesting you bring it up, because I personally feel like we shouldn't be comparing individual schools in this report, because we're asking for a district report anyway.
Yeah, the only reason I was asking, because we separated out elementaries, but we didn't separate out high schools. That's so, it's a matter of consistency.
Yeah, one of my comments was going to be is I personally feel like we get individual school reports during the year, and this report should be a district report. And I worry about even board members looking at this and drilling down and saying, well, this school's not doing as good as that school. Well, that's not what this policy is about. There's nothing in our policy that says that we're making the schools compete. We're competing against ourselves and against the state and the nation, from my view, right? Not Scootney competing with Wahidas. And I worry about, it's not your guys' fault, but I worry about drilling down these numbers and saying, well, this school did better than that school, and that's probably valid at a district level. I'm just not sure it's valid at a board level when it comes to this policy.
Can you go to slide 21, please? You might have mentioned the whys on this one, and my number 21 might be different than your 21. Is that 21? Okay. Keep going up, right there. What is the red?
So the red is the change in students. So students with 2 Fs, they were at 41 in this time frame, down 10. So they were at 51 previously.
Okay.
So this just shows that by concentrating on this, or focusing on this, we're getting a reduction in the number of students that are failing 2 or more classes.
Okay.
So if there's no number, does that mean they stayed the same?
Yes.
Okay, so none of them went up then?
Not that I'm aware of.
Not according to this chart.
Yeah. Anyway. And then obviously this column is the 3 Fs, the 4 Fs, and on down the line. So that's the explanation for that.
Thank you. This was a really interesting chart to see for me.
I think it was a great presentation overall. I don't want anybody to feel like I'm just tearing it apart and being critical. I think it was really good overall.
No, we certainly appreciate the feedback. We want to make sure that we, in an efficient manner, provide the information that the board requests. And we also want to make sure that we think our job is to make sense of what you're asking and to deliver that. Certainly in support of Dr. Hurst and his mission as the superintendent. So certainly any feedback is welcome. And what I also appreciate is the opportunity to provide my input as well and to let you know how hard these folks are working and the classroom teachers day to day. And if you see some of that data and say, why is the progress what it is? Then I think it challenges all of us to go back to that big picture vision and the why that we're suggesting some of these dramatic changes, because is that flat line enough? And you asked if is it acceptable? I would hope you would sense that there's evidence in the system that it's not acceptable, so we're willing to take on some tough fights.
So we're going to go ahead and move to ends 3.
End 3 would provide, as an update, I will handle just a few of the slides. I would ask Thalia if she would move down to, well, let me backtrack a little bit. I know there was a call for some additional data components that the board was interested in seeing, so I wanted to provide some of those. If you look at slide 9, what that will capture is the actual metrics around graduation rate. The data for this, I had a conversation with folks in the system that the numbers might seem like they're a number or two off from what you might find on OSPI. This was from a report in January on ESSA that the site received. Those cohort numbers get adjusted as the data gets cleaned up. That's one of the structures we've put in place at Othello High School this year, is we're being much more aware of when, so this idea that we heard earlier that 50 students left the system, where did those kids go? Really paying close attention to where those 50 kids ended up. Because if they're being counted against our graduation rate, but it's because we didn't input them properly and they went to high school in Connell, the data's not clean. So part of it is a data cleanup process across the state. What we've provided here is year-to-year growth, and then the last column is the current predicted number by the Othello High School staff. That's how they're feeling about graduation rate for this school year. The next slide that I would ask us to consider would be slide number 12. That slide provides evidence across the system related to attendance, which was one of the measures we had shared before, absent of this format of data. Overall attendance rate this year was identified as 95%. We use our Skyward system, which has been in-house for several years, but it's not a function that we've accessed or really paid close attention to. And certainly with the call in the system for Dr. Hurst to monitor attendance, we are able to generate this data for you and provide evidence of where each site is individually related to attendance. Good point. So thank you, Mr. Spencer. There was an adjustment in the state of Washington about how they calculate an absence. It used to be they had 2 windows for the last few years. They would calculate, there was a cutoff right around lunchtime. If you weren't here, it was counted as an absence. Now they've broken that down a little bit further into 4 blocks. So it adjusted the way that absences are counted. So to provide a year-to-year breakdown, it would look, the data that we would present from last school year would look a little bit different than this year. We were trying to provide some evidence for the board related to the goal and the target that was established.
So just so I understand this number, is this the average amount of students attending each day, or the average amount of students that have missed a day of school? What is this exactly?
That's the average attendance day-to-day at those particular sites.
Okay.
The next slide that we would offer for consideration is slide number 14, which is related to truancy. We know that the community truancy boards is a new activity required of schools in the state of Washington. We've got one up and running this year. It's another new structure in our system, providing for you some information about the number of students that have appeared before that board when this data was provided. That percent change, that's explaining that column, that's the evidence that the system provided. So you might hear from a school counselor or building administrators when they have these follow-up meetings about, it's not just you come to the hearing and we hope things get better. They're monitoring progress and said, yep, this student who came before the truancy board had some change, no change, too early to tell. If we notice no change, then it's the next level of intervention, which could be a BECA petition and moving through the courts to put some pressure on families to get their kids to school.
Would it be possible in the future to provide a matrix for what it means to change, to achieve change?
Yep.
I'm sure there's some matrix or something that they use to say, yeah, this kid changed, right?
Yep.
I'm trying to search for the appropriate word for that, but.
Yeah, so it's along the lines of how do you measure growth? Is 1% growth or is 10% growth? A similar idea here is, the kid missed 50% of the days and now he's missing 40% of the days. Is that enough progress? But certainly we could develop that kind of reporting structure. The last one we would ask to consider is really just a summary statement related to personal responsibility and citizenship. And I think it's important that we stick on slide 19, Thalia. Keep going. Right here, some of the activities and structures that we shared with the board when we presented this initially on the 12th, that these schools continue to develop these structures and practices, and that the efforts behind this, the outcome that we expect, if you see on the next slide, and that we would begin to capture evidence around, are we developing confident and responsible students, kids that want to engage with their classmates and with their teachers, and do we have the structures in place to allow those things to happen? Again, a lot of newness in our system in the last year, and so for this one it was more difficult to capture actual data that we could compare year to year. So that's more a summary statement about where the system is headed.
Thanks for bringing that back and providing the additional data. I really appreciate it. I think that's great.
You bet.
We knew there had to be somewhere. There was data.
Say again?
We knew there had to be data on it somewhere.
Yes.
So what I'm going to do for the board is get the Survey Monkeys modified for these ends, and then we'll get them to you pretty quick to give you time to really, I know these are big documents to make notes and determine compliance, so we'll try to get those out soon so they can get back in time for us to get them into the board agenda for next meeting. Any questions for Dr. Hurst on those reports? Okay. We'll move on to item D2 then. Board approval of monitoring response documents. These were the monitoring response documents from GP5 and GP6. One comment, we found them both in compliance. One comment I wanted to make, and this is a conversation we had before, I believe in a meeting, or maybe we did between Tony and I.
It was in a board meeting.
So in our monitoring documents for GPs, thank you all. In order to maintain its commitment to excellence and governance, to the provisions of this policy, and to improve its own performance, the board commits to the following actions. I think the comment was made, if we don't put anything in there, then why have it there, right? if we have it there and want to put something in there, again, that should be part of the Survey Monkey as well. That way it's on the radar, because one of the things I don't have in front of me, which I think could be the answer in the future, is the monitoring document itself, so that when I'm recommending how it's supposed to be filled out, I can ask the board, what are we committed to improving in the future? So I'm bringing this up because I'd like the board to either consider that we need to make sure we're always putting something there to show that we're trying to improve in what we do, or maybe to change GP 4.1.1 to just eliminate that line. And then we could put it in comments. So under number 1, it has comment. We could always put in things we want to improve on under comment. But this would take a change submitted to policy review, so just something for the board to think about. We're not going to make the change today.
I personally want to keep it and have it added to our future Survey Monkeys. But I did take some notes on each one of these and have some of my own thoughts of things we can improve on for the board to consider, since I figured this was going to come up.
I think if we do decide to take out that line, then we would need to also take off the number 1, because there would be no 2. But anyways.
No, the comment is where you would put, are you talking about B? Item B on the report?
No, I'm talking about, there's a 1 and there's a 2. If we were to take 2 off, because isn't that what you were saying?
Oh,
To take 2 off completely, then we would also
formatting
need to
issue.
take off number 1.
Not take off the question, take off the actual number.
The
one.
number, yes,
Yeah.
just the formatting number, right.
I'm personally not in favor of taking that off, because I think the board, even though we're in compliance, we can always improve, and we should be finding areas to improve. But personally, that's just one board member's opinion. But.
Okay.
For example, this is GP5, which is holding the president accountable to his role.
Here we go.
If you go to,
We need to rewrite that.
Get ready.
That statement.
if we go to, while we're good, I think it could be better. The president could be better. So if you go to the actual policy and you go item 1, bullet point 2, where it says ensure that board meeting deliberations are fair, open, thorough, but also efficient, timely, orderly, and to the point. While I think it's satisfactory, I also think that we could make a goal to improve in that area. Some of our meetings get unnecessarily long because we get distracted as a board. Overall, I think we're satisfactory. I don't think it was anything that made it out of compliance, which is why we didn't find it out of compliance. But I think that's one area in that specific policy that we could request the president to set a goal to improve on during this year, from my view. What's the rest of the board think? He is a new president. He's only been
what kind of
a year
powers
and a half.
you'd be able to give me to sometimes speed up the efficiency?
I think you always have the prerogative as the president to say we're getting off track here, we need to move. I think you already have that power.
I think I
Just
do
even
sometimes.
tonight, I feel like we got off track a couple times and onto things that really weren't necessarily deliberations that we needed to have as a board.
Yeah, it's difficult to find where's the line of allowing a board member to make comments and have discussions, and I think it's really up to the whole board to bring that up, and you did tonight, so.
So I feel like we could put that as a commitment to the following action to improve in that area. But if the rest of the board doesn't agree, of course, that's just one board member's opinion, so. And it's always fun to beat up on the president.
I agree with what you're saying.
You enjoyed it when you weren't president, is that what you're saying?
I don't know that I ever gave any other presidents a hard time.
I think we're getting off track.
Good point.
I think from what Tony's saying that, yes, I would have to agree, it would always be a good thing to say how we could improve.
Okay.
Do you
Well, I was
agree
just
with
saying,
that in
we don't
an
even have to-
area,
we'd have
though?
the discussion, I'm just saying if board members disagree, then, or agree with that, then it would be put in policy review at the next board meeting.
Right.
So
I'm
if
sorry.
Nobody thinks about changing it, then just leave it alone.
But do you agree with the statement that we should use that item as
Yes,
an area to improve?
that as well. Both. Just because we're writing it under the president's doesn't mean it's all the president's responsibility to make sure that we're all on track. That's a whole board
I already signed this,
thing.
it's official, we can't change it, but point taken.
I make a motion. You can't do, it's not approved.
Did you capture the, because there's only 2 board members who, so far, who want to add it in. What do you think, Ken?
I have no opinion about it right now at this
All
moment.
right. Mike?
Let's approve these.
Can
So I'm with
I
Mike.
just make it official?
Yeah.
I'm with Mike that I'd like to just approve it, but I've absolutely heard your comment, and I think going forward with all of our GPs, we need to make sure we're putting things that we can improve on in there.
Having said that, so I would like to make a motion that we approve GP5 and GP6 with the addition that under item 2, that we commit to no actions, and that it be added that there is no actions that we're going to improve on this year instead of leaving it blank. That's my motion.
There's been a motion by Director Ashton to approve the monitoring document to add no actions to improve on, is that this year, under number 2. So you want a second?
Second.
Been a first and a second by Director Garza. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Aye.
Now you have to sign it again.
Motion carries 4-1.
That was for both of them, correct?
Okay, so now we are in item E1, policy review. And so 3 of these, well, 2 of them are, that's right, we could have made the recommended changes tonight. They're GP 5 and 6 are the ones we just surveyed. EL 15 is a final reading. And so I wanted to see if we could maybe take care of those first with the motion if the board feels comfortable.
So I have a question, Mr. President.
Yeah.
Why, or if it's a final reading and GP 17.1.1 is also a final reading, why is it in a different section?
It's a new policy.
Okay. So
one of them says review, discussion, revision of current board policies, and the other one is proposed new board policies.
So I move that we approve item E1-3 EL 15 and E1-4 GP 17.1.1.
Was that a motion to approve 2?
That is.
So there's been a motion to approve item.
Can I ask a question before we, on EL 15?
Yeah, you can add, let me finish the motion.
Sorry,
first part.
okay.
To approve E1-3 and E1-4.
On EL 15, under number 1, the student conduct and discipline code, does that include dress code?
That would be a question for Dr. Hurst.
Or are you asking for the interpretation of the policy? Because that would be a board question. What
I'm
the purposes
asking Dr. Hurst, I guess. Yes.
Student conduct and discipline code, I don't interpret that to be dress code.
Okay.
Okay.
Then I approve, second
Motion by Director Ashton, second by Director Stevenson. Any discussion?
Are we approving the formatting in this, or can we make formatting adjustments without having to approve it? It's weird to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 1, 2 underneath a 1. Should be an AB.
Yeah, that was,
But it's,
I don't think that's the way it was in the original.
it's not, in my mind, the formatting is not part of
We
approving
have
the
approved
policy.
it with the recommended formatting changes in the past. So I don't see any reason we can't. But that's not the motion.
That's my point, is I don't think you need to have a motion that specifically changes the formatting of something to have it fixed, from my view.
Okay.
If the board disagrees, then we have to get a new motion.
There's been a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. We still have 3 policies in policy review. That would be GP6, GP5, GP6, and EL20.
Tony, was there a reason that you didn't include one E1-1 and E1-2 in that?
Yes.
Okay.
Do you want another reason? It's getting late. If you don't propose revision, then there is no reason to reapprove a policy that's already approved.
Okay, gotcha.
And so I didn't see a
Reason to-
a revision, and I didn't have a revision, so I haven't proposed that we change those policies.
Okay, I understand now. Can I propose that we postpone EL20 discussion due to time? Because we still have executive session to deal with.
Well,
I mean, I know
I
that,
think we were under time based on time expectations.
oh goody.
I moved to approve EL20.
Been a motion by Director Ashton to approve new board policy EL20.
Second.
Second by Director Garza. Any discussion? I sure hope so.
I'd like to hear Dr. Hurst's interpretation of the policy.
So I did speak with the board president about this particular policy. One of the things I would say, as we look at, let's see what section.
Is it number 4 to display the Safe School Comprehensive Plan?
No.
I think it was 3 non-lethal.
Lethal and
Yes, it's
non-lethal?
actually number 3, a failure to consider all options to provide both non-lethal as well as lethal protection for students and staff in each school, including but not limited to arming current school district staff. One of the things I shared with the board.
Answering all of the questions. And 13 of their administrators.
The answer is no, Jen. They're not policy governance district.
Oh, they said yes. That's interesting.
That's why the superintendent answered all the questions.
Right, one of them nodded her head at one point, but she was tired. Specifics were into what only this kind of gun can be carried. They have to only have this kind of bullet. I mean, extremely detailed. And I just thought it was interesting to hear that perspective, because from a district that carries. Although I still am not sure I agree or disagree with that. Anyways, it was the lethal discussion.
So the motion on the table and second is to approve the policy as written, but there was a specific request for interpretation by Dr. Hurst. I don't know if we've gotten that yet.
So as I look at section number 1, I really interpret that to mean that that we're training staff. I interpret staff to mean staff and teachers. When we look at identifying behaviors, we're really getting to preventative. So making sure that we have measures that are preventative, where we're identifying individuals who can be a threat. So individuals could not just be limited to students, it could be really anyone that's on campus, or even adults. So what are those behaviors that people are exhibiting on the campus? And then how are we identifying those behaviors and then referring them to specialists? So that's how I would look at number 1. So when I look at number 2, it's really getting to not just identifying, but looking at specific programs that deals with prevention also for these individuals who have been identified. When I look at number 3, it's considering all options, and specifically looking at the one that have been called out, not limited to arming current school district staff, that is an option, but also looking at other options. And then how am I going to, or how are we going to solicit that feedback from personnel, where we're actually considering all options from them, from maybe a survey, a perception survey. And number 4 really deals with adopting a plan, a Safe Schools plan, making sure it's distributed and distributed to the community. So parents, students, and the staff. Staff is interpreted as staff and teachers. So that's how I would interpret it just on the first look.
Any other discussion? So the board is ready to vote on this on second reading.
The board has to vote on it,
Motion
by
was
the
made.
way.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
Mr. President, in light of the new policy being passed, I would like to add a amendment to policy GP 8.1, annual board agenda, to include monitoring of the new EL 20 on the May 29th meeting, because we don't have a date to monitor that document, the policy that's just been approved in our calendar. And
So just to stop, wouldn't we bring a recommended revision to policy 8.1 next board meeting then?
we've already adjusted, earlier in this meeting, we already recognized that we needed to make a revision to GP 8.1 anyway, because 2 board meeting dates are incorrect, so I just figured we could do it at the same time.
All right, I thought you were asking to make May 29th be when we monitor this policy.
I am.
This one, EL 20.
I am. And I'm going to also include that we modify the dates shown on GP 8.1 annual board agenda to modify the meeting that shows Monday, May 9th, to change it to May 14th, and the one that shows Monday, May 25th to May 29th. I don't think they're complicated enough that we need to wait to do a complete policy revision, because it's just a calendar. It's not actually a main policy.
It's policy. It's going to have to come to us in the next board meeting for, under policy review anyway, in order for us to vote on the revisions.
That's fine.
Okay. So there's been a motion by Director Ash. No. It's a request.
You just said, you just said it's going to have to
It's not
come.
following our typical procedure, so I'm just trying to get my head
It's,
wrapped around it.
it's not, but I still don't follow why. We don't have a policy that says that there has to be a written policy to make a modification to an existing policy. Do we? Where is it?
We don't, I just.
So
That's fine with me.
clarify to me why I can't make that motion tonight.
I never said you could. It's not a motion though, is it?
I started as a motion, yeah. I'll
You
do it
did say
again.
he couldn't do that, that it had to come in writing. But I don't know if I agree with that.
I would have done it earlier, but I didn't know we were going to approve this policy tonight. I can't propose a change to a calendar that doesn't have a policy. I didn't know it was going to get approved tonight, the new EL 20.
Okay, so are you adding,
I'm adding,
you're changing the agenda though, essentially?
I'm requesting
Which I
that we
know
add
we've
another
very well-
policy.
We've been very clear about not doing that in the past.
So put it on for the next meeting then, but
I would say, I thought you were just saying, I would like to see this in policy review for next
I'm just saying
meeting.
there's no way that I could have requested it because there's no way for me to know that EL 20 was going to pass this evening.
Is there an issue with waiting until next meeting?
Just a notification issue and time for Dr. Hurst to prepare. If we wait till the next meeting, he has 2 less weeks to prepare his EL 20 document to show where he's in compliance of it. If we're going to wait till the next meeting, I'll probably be asked.
I think it's fine to just do it now, my opinion. So I would agree with Tony if we're not voting, but opinionating. That's not the right word. Whatever.
My issue is we're ticking down to the end of the year. And if we don't set a baseline for EL 20 this year, it's going to get pushed to next year. And then we're not going to have any substantive change to a policy that we've passed for another year. And I want to get towards having some, and maybe even having another public meeting after the public hears Dr. Hurst's formal presentation on EL 20. I think it's a big deal, student safety. I don't want to push it off.
I agree with all that. I don't know how to handle the way that this is going right now because it's way out of the norm for us and it's not following the agenda, so I don't know. That's the part I'm struggling with.
I'm okay with waiting, so it's fine too. I'll just make the request that you add that to the next policy agenda as a policy, as a review of policy.
The rest of the board might not agree.
Just seems like it's not how we usually do things.
How many policies have we approved since we've been on the board? Brand new, like this. It's only been one other one that I know of, and it was EL 20 until a month ago. So it's not like this is a normal thing. We don't write policies every board meeting. So to say it's not normal is true, because we don't write new policies every board meeting.
So we approve the policy, that's not my.
Ken, what do you think? If you agree, then there's 3 of us.
But when you have to figure out when you're going to monitor it.
You think?
Approving a policy that's never going to be monitored
Okay.
doesn't make any sense.
3 of us think it needs to be taken care of now. I know this is weird.
Okay, so tell me what it is you're even asking so I know.
I'm clarifying. My main interest is to clarify when we're going to monitor this policy.
Yeah, I think you could have done that just with a request for those changes.
But it
to
has,
go into the
it
next
has to
board
be
meeting.
done in the calendar year, though. It has to be done in the calendar, because you said it was a policy.
Yeah, I mean, by you asking for it to be added to the calendar to approve next board meeting, you just gave Dr. Hurst the heads up that that's going to be what you're requesting.
And I'm fine with that. I'd also want to add a discussion,
Approve it tonight, I'm just
because
saying.
my interpretation is .1s aren't policies, that they're procedures for the board, but I know it's getting late, so. And it's 8.1 and 8.2. My understanding was as though those aren't policies. But we should do some research as a board.
So we can just change the monitoring documents tonight too then?
That's what we did.
Okay, devil's advocates, you 2 are the worst to be doing this with each other.
I'm cool
I
to,
don't even know. Okay,
I'm
so
cool
what do we
to
do?
have it next time.
Someone can help me with this.
That's
That would be
fine.
good.
Do we need to vote that we're adding those adding and changing those dates? Does that need to be a vote? Or does that just need to be hey, heads up, please change that. That's where we're at.
If the board wants to essentially add in a policy review item, force it through on a first reading when it's not even up here for us to look at, then that's one thing. If the board's asking for a change to be added to 8.1 for policy review next meeting, then that's a different request.
Just add it for next meeting. That'll work.
Be the easiest way at this point.
Next meeting.
Glad we got to that after. Okay. So I believe we are done with item E1 and moving on to item F1, executive session. We will go into executive session for 45 minutes for the purpose of discussing contract negotiations. We're not going to recess before, we'll go right into it. And there will be no action taken after.
Be interesting.